right, everybody, welcome to the BizDad recap episode. This week, we're going to be talking all about fatherhood, as being a father, being a dad is like the number one thing for me in the world. I love being a dad. I love talking about it. So please just listen to this recap episode from all these amazing fathers that we've had on the podcast this year. I really hope that you enjoy and get some nuggets out of this. If you hear something that strikes your fancy, that you're just saying, hey, I really want to learn more about this person, jump back to the full episode, listen to the whole thing. We have some amazingly insightful dads who have some great advice for you to be able to pull from and learn from. So please jump back, listen to the full episode, take notes, and please reach out if you have any questions for me or anything. So please enjoy this episode on fatherhood, and we'll have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you guys all in the new year. Super excited to chat with Pete Armstrong today. Father of 3. I'm really looking forward to chatting with him.
So when I got divorced, one of the primary things I did was improve my relationships with my 2 older kids, because I had been putting my ex-wife ahead of them. They told me, Dad, you don't ever listen to us. You always listen to Megan. That hurt. And we're about 2 years, almost 3 years into my business. I only work with men. I think my clients call me a mental fitness coach. I'm a certified mental fitness coach with positive intelligence. I'm a certified trauma-informed coach to removing the human spirit. I've had a lot of apprenticeship and mentorship under a mindset coach. Through my training in trauma, I've been incorporating a lot of somatic type work into my life because of my trauma. And I've seen amazing changes. I'm also helping my clients. They're all dads. My guys are 35 to 50. Most work in the professional realm. Some are married, some are divorced. But the core thing they struggle with is relationships. Often romantic, or they're more angry with their kids than they'd like to be. Or they're impatient with it. But then they can't be present to I don't even know how to be present. I'm thinking about work all day. Mm-hmm. When I'm home with the kids. And all that, man, is just connected to trauma. It's all connected to us attaching to something inside of us, something external that's going to help us feel safe and worthy. And unfortunately, if we keep chasing that thing, you're never going to get rid of that anxiety, that angst. And so I'm helping men go do the inner work, get to know themselves, work on the things that are in the way of them loving themselves, in the way of understanding. What I think I'm really good at, I haven't said this other than to my clients, this is the first time I'm going to say this, is I'm really good at helping men see what they don't see about themselves.
Yeah.
That's about all I'm good at in life.
And oftentimes that's all you need to be good at, right? If you can help somebody see that side of it, that's a game changer for folks.
That's what my client said 2 days ago. Was, dude, that's why I'm working with you. It's oh yeah.
It's because they can't see it themselves. They need somebody to help them out. Boy, you smell like you were in the pool. Yeah. You stink.
He's tired too.
Yeah.
You want the connection.
You make a nap.
Yeah. Real scary.
Oh, you too, Dad.
Yeah, man. Look at that. This is good. He just wants some love, man. This is what he wants. This is what it's about right here, man. He wants connection.
That's right. You little man. So you got to come over too, buddy? Come over to the other need. Well, and my little lady. All 3 of them showed up in here. Gracious, she ran away. The whole crew's showing up here.
Well, it's awesome, man. We can do her. Is there any dollars in the one?
Say hi.
Hi, guys. That's right.
He said, hi, guys.
Hi.
She just staring at herself.
She's who that minute. Oh, look at that love. They love her little sister, don't they?
Very much. They love their little sister.
Yeah.
You think your eyes, Jack?
He's going to finish this conversation. Okay, boys? Love you guys.
Bye, guys.
Here with me, little lady. He said,
Can you tell him I said thank you for coming?
He said, thank you for coming. Love you, boys. Love you, little lady. Crazy kiddos.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. Much agreed. It's one of the best parts about working from home. It's also one of the worst parts because, man, oh man, can that be distracting in the middle of the day to see those 3 little kids.
The world?
Want to go play?
But you notice what's your oldest son's name?
Adam.
Yeah, man. So little Adam, your oldest, dude. You see how he just came in there. He just wanted, honestly, that's all he needed was that little bit. That's all he needed. He needed some connection. He needed some love from you. You not only were willing to give it, but you received that. You just knew it, man. That's just beautiful, man. Proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Serious. I really encouraging. I love how you allowed them to. This is actually really important, man. Try to get this right. If you were to empathize with your oldest who came in first, and think about himself. Be him for a second. You open the door and think about why he came in. He wanted connection. He wanted love. He wanted to see his daddy. You allowed him and you welcomed him with open arms. He felt accepted. Once he felt accepted, the other kids came in and felt accepted. You didn't have to respond that way. As a matter of fact, you could have been like, hey, I'm in a podcast right now. You need to get away. And you might have said it in a nice, discerning way and not in a bad way. But your son was needing love. And what you told him was, hey, you didn't know it, right? You didn't think about it. A lot of men are disconnected from this, at least in this moment, is that this little boy needed love. That's all he wanted, man. And you welcomed him and loved him and connected with him. That's beauty. But what could happen is when those moments happen where he just needs love right now, and we don't know it, and he opens the door, you said something along the lines like, hey, dude, you need to get away. I'm in this podcast. I'll be with you in a little bit. He takes that. Most children take that as, I'm not getting. And what happens is they end up developing that when they feel that way, not just from one instance, obviously, Adam, but then they start taking and internalize that. Oh, like, that's how certain attachment, avoiding attachment. Oh, I feel this way. I don't, my knees. And I know this is like I'm going on a little tangent here on something deeper, but I want all men listening to this to know that when your child's coming to you, doesn't matter if they're freaking 15 years old or they're 1 year old, they're coming to you and they want hugs and kisses or love. Please try to give it to them. There's nothing more important than those moments. Yeah. And so this really isn't just for you, Adam. This is for anyone listening, me, brother, listening. This is a beautiful moment right here. This right here, it is all the little micro decisions that man has to make to teach children what love is. Mm-hmm. That when they feel that discomfort, that aching, that yearning, that loneliness, and they get it from our parents, I want to get this from my daddy, that you welcome them in, you're teaching them how to love. And so, good on you, man. That was beautiful. I'm really proud of you. I'm happy for your kids and your wife. And I want men to see this, that this, I'm not making, this is really important, these little moments. And so I hope men listening realize that this is, do what Adam was.
Yeah, I'll say that first off, I appreciate it. It is, to me, it's extremely important. And it's one of those, I didn't realize it. I realized it while I was in the military that I was missing out on a lot of it, which is one of the reasons I left. And then it was like, now I need to know, no matter what, that I can be right there by their side if they need it. Because I don't want to be on the other side of the world doing some other crazy thing, doing like missing out on some other adventure, missing out on some hug that was supposed to be there, or for them to feel like they're missing out on some hug that was supposed to be there. And it's sometimes, and this is the wrong way to say it, but I'm going to say it because I don't know how else to say it, but sometimes I feel like I can go a little bit too far with it in so much that it takes away from my ability to get the job done from time to time. But at the same point, it's like, it doesn't matter necessarily if I build a bajillion-dollar company if my kids don't love me or they don't have a connection with me. So I might as well have that connection with them because that's going to last way longer than any business that I build or anything that I'm doing for some client or for some whatever. So to me, and I'm hoping again for everybody that's listening, it's not that I have it all figured out by any means. In this particular scenario, it worked out really well that I was in a great headspace, which I usually am recording these podcasts, that they were ready to come in and just say hello. It's remembering to do that in those hard moments when your brain is not fully ready for that. That is there again. It's probably fear-based. Like when we shove the kid back out the door, is what is somebody else that's watching this going to think, or what if I don't get this email finalized before it, or whatever is going on that we decide to get angry and push our kids out the door. And it always goes back to me there's that one video, I wish I could remember what it was, but I think it was on CNN or something like that, where a guy was being interviewed and then the kid comes in the back in the office. And then he's like freaking out and getting angry. And then the nanny comes in and is like pulling the child out. And he's like getting really upset. He ends up later firing the nanny and all this stuff. And the dude, like, he was fearful that he was going to look bad on national television because a kid walked in the background, instead of going, guess what? I'm doing an interview from home. This is part of what's going on. And I'm a dad. So guess what's going to happen? Kids are going to show up sometimes. And it is what it is. And I never want that to be the case. Anybody listening, I'm hoping, can feel that same thing. Like, a deal doesn't get ended because a child walks into the room or whatever. There was one podcast I was listening to once. It was a mom. She was a single mom, and she had, I think what she called it was like a mother's assistant or something like that. But she brought her kids everywhere. She was an apartment investor, and I wish I could remember her name. It was years ago that I listened to this. But she walked into a broker's office to talk about an apartment building that she was planning to buy. And they had the kids, and the kids were playing with something on the floor. And the broker was like kindly saying, do you want to come back when the kids aren't with you type of thing. And she was like, oh, the kids are always with me because this is what I am. I'm a mom. I'm a mom first, and the kids are always going to be here. So if that doesn't work with you, then I'll find a broker that it does work for. And I don't have an issue with that. I completely understand what you're saying. And so in that moment, those kids realized, boy, I'm super important. My mom does not care. And it also sets some standards. This is what it is. Like, it's okay. And if that's not okay with you, that's fine. I'll do business with somebody else. Like you can find plenty of people that won't bring their kids into the office, and I can respect that. But for me, my kids are always going to be there. There's no way around it. So
Thoughtful. Yeah, it's hard to do that, but at the end of the day, I think what I want to emphasize on before we get back to you talking about the priorities stuff is you said something beautiful. You said like when I'm not in the right mindset and I'm operating from a place of scarcity or lack or fear, you hit the nail on the head. In that, and this is fairly replete in mindfulness and neuroscience and positive psychology, trauma, all the things that I'm really interested in teaching men about and learning about and coaching on. You are more likely to react in a more unaccepting, protective way. Because what you're doing, you could have been like, hey, not right now. That's actually, I would even almost say it's bad. You're doing something wrong. Get curious. I would say is, if you did that, what's happening is that Adam was protecting himself. Because there's a belief, right? There's a stored belief, maybe some past experience, that you fear in some way, shape, or form, that because that happens, the people listening to the podcast, they're going to reject me because my kids interrupted. I'm not a good podcast host. I'm not a good business owner. That means less money. You connect all the dots. And this is why, Adam, we need to take care of ourselves. Because we need to reduce the amount of times that we are in those states. We're never going to get it 100%. We're not Jesus. We're not Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
But don't you want to try to be your best self? And so let's just try to be our best selves and learn how to minimize those opportunities. In order to minimize opportunity, you react in fear. Gotta be doing the healing work. We gotta get coaching, get therapists. We gotta regulate our nervous systems. We need to get exercise. We need to get good, high quality sleep. We need to connect with the ones who love us. I know it sounds like a lot. Hard to give one thing to do is for people to do, men and dads, is get quality sleep. Universal change. It will reduce your nervous system's fight or flight mechanism, which is usually driven by fear. And if you're not in fear, now you can love. You can do what you just did. And so what I always try to tell men, I'm like, hey, listen, you're never going to get perfect. But I always try to say, let's get to a place where you can love more and fear less. Let's move it. And this is an example of you loving more. That's what I love to help men do. Hey, let's just love more. Because when we love, man, like, there is no fear.
Love it. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
No pun intended.
Yeah. We have Wyatt hanging over with Matt Brawner, who I'm looking forward to getting to know a little bit more today. You said you homeschool on Fridays. Talk to me about what that looks like in your house.
So we homeschool at night, wife, trying to become more that time. Try to have dedicated time. Wyatt, because he is one boy, in a house of a lot of girls, is getting older. Like, when can you come shadow dad? And my wife and I do a family huddle. And one of the things on our family huddle is what manly things can Wyatt shadow you doing this week? And then you do some one-on-ones throughout the week with my kids. Again, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It's really natural for kids to go to how I make a pivot towards dad. And so my wife take notes throughout the week of, hey, here's what I'm noticing. The kids that I think you should bring up in your one-on-one. So tomorrow we do our Sabbath. Those are my one-on-one times with girls. Wyatt and I'll do a breakfast tomorrow. Lando, the 6-month-old, isn't ready. There. We started thinking about homeschool much before COVID and the riots. And for us, it really roots down on our faith. Like, we want the home to be the center of everything that we do. And for us, we can't get there if we're apart from our children most of the day. A lot of what I'm sharing here has been what's been shared with me. There's a ministry, family teams led by Jeremy Pryor there. I don't know if sending the material. I think it's really applicable here. He'll talk about, I was on a trip to Israel and kept noticing that it was the dads pushing the stroller. It seems so funny. If you look at Old Testament family, if you look at what it means to train a child, look at the physical amount of time that's required that you have to spend around the child. I want the tip of the spear to be the home. I want the home to be our celebration of values. Home is where you go to learn. Home is where you go when you're scared. Home is where you go that we want to celebrate. And so that's what we're going to teach at home. And now, as the world we live in has played out, I get very impassioned about where kids go to school, because I think that there are some really evil things happening in state schools there. I don't say that to win an argument or not my chest, condemn anyone. I'm the son of a school teacher. I love my mom dearly. I just look at what's happening today and I don't feel safe for our kids there. That just reinforces why we homeschool.
So you and Mandy, what sort of intentionality are you two having? It sounds like already that Mandy is like taking notes through the week on things that you can cover and all this stuff, but I'm assuming it didn't necessarily start that smoothly. So what was the process for you two having these discussions about homeschool, about how you wanted to run the family with intentionality? It sounds like you guys do now. Yeah, I would imagine. Yes.
So the idea that both, this all sounds really dorky, to be honest. I really need to do this, but it was going on with a whole lot of other messiness that is the first couple of years of marriage, right? I think marriage is the centerpiece of a family, and it's really those first couple of years that solidified data that goes along to show this, right? Like you get past the first 5 years, the divorce rate falls off a cliff, right? Because you've sorted through all of that. And so as we talked about, like, where are we going? Both of us want something different here, but we're not quite sure how to do this. And so then we just started talking to people, largely in the church circles, because faith led us to one another. And then met more people like yourself and just willing to take that in. And then it really stems from the idea that the family operates as a team. I can't take credit. These are things that have been blessed to me with and passed down to me. But the family has to take on the identity of a team, right? A team has intentionality. A team practices, right? A team has a strategy. A team has a leader. I don't simply just allow things or just hope that things happen, right? What I do with my money and my time is how I want to align myself with the gospel here. But I want to talk to my wife about that. We've gone through a messy process of trying to, what's our family vision statement? How are we doing that day in and day out? The thing that you'll hear repeated a lot around our house is start bad and then get better. So family huddles they were a source of family fights. But then you keep going and it gets better over time. My wife looked at me like I had 4 heads the first time I talked about homeschool. But as you lean in and you're willing to take on something that may be different, you accept the idea that nothing changes. I want a different outcome. And again, I'm quoting somebody who's not myself right now. I think it's a pastor in Cincinnati that I follow, Brian Tone. He's got his podcast, The Aggressive Life. He'll always come out and he'll say, you ever notice that most kids aren't great? They're not. So if most kids aren't great and you follow the outcome or you follow what most parents do, then you're going to get that outcome, which isn't very great. So I'm willing to take on something different. Today, that looks like we focus a lot on the week, and we focus on that because I think that is the most important unit of time. It comes from scripture. Dad talked about things there. Like in who you are as a person, you have to be that person in a week. And in order to live rhythmically, that's why goals are dangerous things, because they can take you out of what's a weekly rhythm. You have seasonal rhythms there too, but okay, what does our family need to do over the course of a week? So days around our house have themes here. And then when we plan out our week, it all stems from the idea of a Sabbath. Like resting on one day, what does that mean? Every other day has a feel there, and every other day is a little bit different depending on what we need to get done as a team there. And then as the team grows, more is expected of it. There's just a level, to put it in really practical terms, with 4 kids, one of which is a 6-month-old right now, more is expected out of one.
Yeah.
I think would be if you were in a smaller household. There's when you have 4 kids, there's a level of noise on a child basis that it's telling because our team can't get things done, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to know how to get your shoes on and get into the car because if mom and dad have to do that for all 4 of you guys, you're just not going to go very many places.
Yeah. No kidding.
So there's practical and biblical application for how to look at our week, and that drives everything. And the week is ultimately sound. We call our Shabbat meal. What do we do on Shabbat?
Eat pizza.
We eat pizza. We want to repeat. We want to make sure that Shabbat today's feels different. What do we put on the table on Shabbat?
A tablecloth.
Yeah, who made the tablecloth?
Tea granny. Granny.
Granny made the tablecloth. And that's our
Nice.
time when we pause. We say, hey, we're coming together here to honor God and to spend time resting.
What kind of mentors did you decide to look at to help build this out for your family to get this structure in place?
Sure. It's all biblically based, but a ministry that really brought it to practical application for us was family teams. It was something I actually dug into during COVID. They do a fatherhood masterclass on how to be an Old Testament father there. And we've continued to take in that content. And I'm sure you can relate to this. There's a couple of key decisions that they can start to domino, right? You meet other people who are homeschooling and who are entrepreneurs. They tend to do some other cool and interesting things in their life, right? So then you can take that in. And so being willing to step out into those, there's been other people, and you're always tinkering. You're always tinkering with them. And we've certainly had times when we've struggled. We're coming out of it. When we did some travel, we really neglected our Sabbath. And I would say our team suffered from that. I know I personally suffered for that. And so it's that continual application, but broad brush, what we're going towards is that we want to get away from peer-centered identity. Your identity comes from the family that Heavenly Father gave you here. It is my job to help you identify and form a relationship with your Heavenly Father. And then there are specific rhythms in the Bible that we can use them. Jesus sat down and had Sabbath meals together. And it said specifically that covenant of rest and how do we rest and rest together so that our lives can be integrated. I think it's something Western families struggle a lot with. And everything I say to someone who struggles too, I pray that no one hears me condemn. It's hard to be a dad in one context and say, okay, but this is what I go do for myself. Like we are constantly looking at our hobbies, what we do, that people can come alongside us. I didn't grow up hunting and fishing. I do it now though, because it's something I can do with my son. So we're always very careful against anything that takes us away, puts us on even to the structure of our home. We have one TV. We spent extra money to get a really big and nice TV because I want the whole family to hang out together in the family room. I gotta make the family room cool. And so as we designed our home, we built and put this wood burning stove. It's awesome. It looks cool. It smells great. It provides warmth because it gets cold in Minnesota. Most winters. So my favorite thing is in the mornings, all the kids running in the winter go stand in front of the stove just to work.
Nice.
So I'm going off track there, but that just bleeds into everything that we do.
No, I absolutely love it. The idea of bringing the family together at all times in all things is, again, one of the reasons I do this podcast. The themes, do you know off the top of your head what the themes are for each day? I'm curious.
Yeah. Wyatt, are you going to help me with this? Okay. Because we have Shabbat, and then Sunday, we have football. On Sunday, you play, but we call that Ramp Up Sunday. Dad's going to be doing a little bit of Chris work there.
And not
Monster Monday, because it comes back at us. Yeah. After Tuesday, Dad tends to work pretty late on Tuesdays. Math. Working Wednesday. Grinds a little bit, but you're through it. You survive. Tough Tuesday. Then we got slow down Thursday. What do we do on Thursday nights usually? We have a family game night. And then Friday, we want to slide into rest. Like it's a real thing. Like you have to practice resting. Yeah, I fast on Fridays, and then on Fridays we are slowing down so that we can enjoy Shabbat together.
Nice. Yeah, fast on Friday so you can eat that pizza on Saturday. That's right. That's right.
So when you have to do all the travel and everything, how do you keep some of this rhythm still flowing? Because obviously you're not going to be able to do, or maybe you do, but like sitting down doing game night or sitting down eating pizza together on Saturday, if you're traveling, if you're going to walk a property or something along those lines. So what do you do on those times where you have to travel?
It's hard. No two ways about it. As people who look at out of state investing, one of the things, and I used to do a little bit of coaching, that I tell people, you really got to pay attention to this more than you realize, is how easy is it to get to and from a place?
Yeah.
Frankly, for me, is there a direct Delta flight? Because I did a lot of miles on Delta, so I can get there and back and I could do it in the same day. Man, it's a world of difference if I'm telling my team, hey, dad's going to be a little late tonight versus dad has to stay overnight somewhere. And that certainly still happens. So I try to be as efficient as I can. We are doing a lot more investing right now. Despite how tough it is in Minneapolis and St. Paul proper, there's still a lot to like about the market of Minnesota, specifically the suburbs here. And we have our own management company that we've built that we want to continue to utilize. We've had to learn that lesson the hard way. We've been burned. Plenty of people out there run good third-party management companies, not condemning them, condemning your teams. I just got battle scars to show from working with third-party management companies right now, and I want more control.
Yeah.
That. To do that here in the Twin Cities, and that's ultimately what called me here, right? Living in Texas was awesome. Loved Austin, Texas. It was a tear-filled decision to leave there, but I'm like, I got to work, worship, and play all in the same place. So there's, I would say, travel, you minimize it, and then you try to build your fields where your family's as much as you can. What sticks out to me is obviously something that's online, giving me each kids, and it's a thing that seems obvious in the rearview mirror. I've just hit it recently, and so to speak directly to dad out there, dad's involvement goes like this time, right? As long as you're breathing, you're still a father. And so that means that you don't get to just peace out when your kids turn 18 and get out of the house. Like, they need you more every day, and they need specifically dads. I've got some new fathers in my life, and they ask me for advice. And it's interesting. The first 6 to 12 months, like, you love your child by loving your mother, because you'll see God's design in such an amazing way. Like, your wife just knows how to do things. She knows what this baby needs, and she takes over. And she is going to take something to the most vulnerable stages of life and give it life. But then, as that child grows, they need their dad. Set up your life so that you can be involved. And that has specific economic consequences, right? There are seasons of life as a dad where you may be away from home slightly more than you will be during other ones, so that you can set up your fields so that you're blessed with passive income or other revenue streams later on, so that you can parent and lead. I think so often we get stuck at this generation, really as a dad, parenting your grandkids. So I do real estate. I think about long-term cash flow because I want to be able to parent my grandkids. And I can't do that. I'm still going into the office 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah. You're absolutely not wrong there. And that's, again, one of the reasons that you and I both have our oldest kiddos hanging off our shoulders right now. It's an absolute blessing to be able to do it and to be able to serve our families and to be able to, like I tell Adam, my goal is to raise him to be a better man than me. And I can't do that if I send him off to school somewhere that he's learning from other men that aren't what I'm looking for my son to follow, and be as involved as you possibly can be. Like, to your point, just those first 6 months, it's mom. Everything comes from mom. Literally, life is coming from mom at that point. But man, oh man, can you be an amazing representative of what it means to be a good father, a good husband inside the house, and show your kids. Because they catch a whole lot more than you think they do. Hopefully our boys are catching, or all of our kids are catching what we're hoping they are. And we're not representing fatherhood in a poor way, and representing Christ in a poor way. We should be doing everything we can to show that. So I appreciate what you're doing in your family, what you're doing in your business, how you're pushing forward.
I am super excited to finally have Matt Donnelly on. What is your number one thing as a dad that you're absolutely crushing it, that you would want to tell all the dads out there? This is one of the things you should really be crushing too.
So I'm a big kid at heart anyway, so it's not that.
No way. Nobody would be able to pick that up. Yeah.
So I think the number one thing is literally time. You got to spend time with them. And I do a really good job with that. And I would say my business would be doing way better if I didn't become a parent, right? When I became a parent and I wanted to be home at a certain time, I stopped working on the weekends. I started doing all these other things. And I love it. It's also can be frustrating at times, but like I coach my kids' sports. I get them involved in different sports. Every day I come home, my son's going to have a football catch. You want to do this? And I just want to sit with the kids. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, the number one thing I'd say definitely where I'm crushing it is time with the kids. And I think that's super important. And that's also super important to also have time with your wife and separate, get your in-laws or somebody to babysit and go away for overnight somewhere. We'll go to a baseball game and get a hotel sometimes and come home the next day.
Yeah.
And then we live 30 minutes away. But I think it's important to have the time with the kids on a daily basis and then also to have that separate time with your wife or your husband, whatever you're into, Adam.
Yeah. Me and my wife, yes, it's on my goal sheet for this year was to have 2 overnights with my wife. And here we are in July. We have yet to have one of them. Maybe the back half of the year is going to be great and we'll have 2 overnights. But we've got 3 kids, 9, 5, and 1 at the time of this recording. And it's one of those that's, if you don't actually just put it on the calendar and make it happen, then it's going to go to the wayside. It's similarly to we're supposed to have weekly dates on Fridays, right? It's even in our calendar, but something will happen in her job, something will happen in my job. Like it just kind of gets put on the wayside. How do you make sure, what are you doing to really say, you know what, I'm leaving work at 5 no matter what? How are you setting up that schedule to allow that to come to fruition?
In the day, we all get to control our own schedules, right? We get to make these choices of what we're going to do and not going to do. And a lot of times we make up an excuse where you have to do something. If I have to take my kid to soccer practice or basketball practice or whatever else, that becomes a top priority for me. So I'm not going to schedule something that I know that's going to prevent me from getting home in time in order to do that.
Okay. Yeah, when I was first trying to work through some of this stuff before I even started the podcast, and that's one of the reasons I started the podcast was to steal everybody's good ideas. Because if you've got a good idea, I want to do it. As anybody that's listening should, right? What's that? R&D, rip off and duplicate, right? I'm going to completely rip off and duplicate any of the good stuff I hear. But I was always fearful of putting family on the calendar because I told myself, no, like family should be the priority. Like I should be able to do anything around the family. And then somebody was like, no, you need to put the family on the calendar because you're now preserving that time specifically for them to ensure that nothing else gets put on your calendar that is going to prevent you from being able to spend that time with them. And I was like, that is a much better way of thinking about this, is because I was looking at it like, no, like they're not just a spot on my calendar, which is true. They're not just a spot on my calendar, but because they're not just a spot on my calendar, I need them there to preserve that ability to be able to do that. When it comes to, and this is where I was going to ask, and you laid it out there a little bit, like that your business would be better off if you didn't spend as much time with the kids. And that's a balance that I've been trying to fight right now is I need to be able to put some more, or at least I tell myself I need to be able to put more time and effort into the business, but that takes away from the kids. And it's like, how do you fight that battle in your brain? Because we're around a bunch of hard-charging people who are really trying to crush it in life and business. And it's, boy, how do you not put up the scoreboard of dollars and put up the scoreboard of hours instead? Like the hours with my kids as opposed to the dollars in my bank account. What is it that how did you reset your brain if maybe it wasn't a reset? How did you tell yourself that that's where you needed to go?
Yeah, I try to take myself outside of my brain and look at it from a super high view. And I know that 60-year-old Matt, 70-year-old Matt, 80-year-old Matt is not going to have this time again. He's going to wish that he had this time with his kids. And if you talk to anyone that's older, they tell you the same thing. If their number one regret, they didn't have kids, they didn't spend more time with their kid, they work too much. I always try to think of it that way, even as hard as it is. I know I need more money than I have right now because the life I live is pretty damn expensive. But again, I just try to pull back in. This is more important. I'm not going to just die, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
This is more important and I'll get through it and I'll figure it out. The one mantra I always have in my head that I always do is figure it out.
Yeah.
You can always figure it out. Just pivot, doing something different, but gotten this far with just figuring it out.
Yeah. How do you, I've tried to relate that type of thought process with my kids. So how do you already work that into your kids' life as well, into their brain, like to figure it out? And what are some true applications that you're already nodding your head? So what are the true applications on that for your kids?
Yeah. So my daughter is she's more naturally wired to try to figure it out on her own, where my son's more wired to be lazy, let's just say. He's a very smart kid. Let's just say they're at an age now where if they want to get orange juice, and he's like, can you give me orange juice? And they're looking at you like you want to go get it. I was like, you can go get it, go figure it out. And then go get the cup. open up the refrigerator door, do this. It's now that they're older, 9 and 10, not that old, but things that I would normally do for them, now it's making them do it. Make them do chores around the house. It's something that I think that they can do on their own that I want them to try to figure out and do it on their own. And we're just getting into that stage of life now, this past 8 months, let's just say.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think it was in the past probably 8 months or so that Adam, my oldest, really started to, like, he cooks his own eggs and like practicing all of that type of stuff. And it's, oh, yeah, you're totally capable of doing a lot of these things. And I'm trying to give them that freedom. So we started homeschooling. We're getting ready to start our second year of homeschool. And I wanted to be able to give them a lot more freedom and understanding of what their schedule is and what they're doing and how they're setting stuff up. And one of the things that I want to go bake a cake. I said, all right, go bake a cake. All you guys, go figure it out. So the 9 and the 5-year-old in the kitchen, just figuring it out. And so some of it, there are questions like, okay, I need to cut this or do that or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right, how would we do that? Maybe you need a little bit of help with that. They really have been phenomenal in just going, I'll just figure it out. And they do. And their first cake was it tasted good, looked terrible. It looked horrible, but man, did it taste good. It was still excellent. It came out more like brownies, I don't know how that got so flat, but it's all right. It's all right. They did a great job, and it was fun to just have them figure it out. And they love bread, so that's their next thing. We already have a good, I don't remember what the machine is called, but the little mixer things, and that'll knead the bread and everything for them. So all they have to do is just go and figure it out. And that's one of my favorite terms to tell them. Is you mentioned it, as I tell them all the time. I said, all right, well, figure it out.
I think it's a flaw of us as parents and most people that are parents, where you just want to do it for them because it's easier to do it than to explain it and let them do it, knowing they're likely going to mess up some way. You're going to have a bigger mess to clean up. But I think that's an important trait to try to instill in our kids.
What kind of sports are your kids in? And was that encouraged by you or just something that they wanted to do?
Definitely encouraged by me. So I wanted to incorporate at a young age to be active. So you always got to be doing something, and I don't care what it is, but you got to be doing something and something that's active. So my son and my daughter started playing soccer at a young age. My son plays basketball, baseball. He does flag football now.
Nice.
I'm typically an assistant coach for everything but soccer, or I was a head coach when they were younger and you didn't really need to know too much. Yeah, there's some strategy involved. I start stepping back in the assistant role.
There you go. Yeah.
My daughter's soccer, gymnastics. She's learning how to play electric guitar right now.
Nice.
It's cool. And again, for Father's Day, one of the things I ask is that we do a family workout team. So we'll go for a little jog. There's a fitness court like a half mile from my house. We'll do a workout there. I got a pull-up bar in the garage, and I'll have the kids do pull-ups. They'll say, hey, Dad, can I have whatever, a bag of popcorn or chips or whatever? And I'll look at them. I'm like, how many push-ups do I need to do? And I'm like, 10, 15. And they'll do it in public too, which is great.
Yeah.
The other kids we were just at the pool the other day, and they got like these Snickers bars. And then my daughter goes, Daddy, can I get a Snickers ice cream bar? And I was like, you're going to have to do some push-ups. And at the pool, she gets down and just bangs out 15 push-ups.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I am writing that one down for sure. I like that a lot.
You can try to earn it, right? Obviously, you're going to eat some candy, you're going to do all this stuff. You're not going to eat as healthy as ideally want, but a lot of those times they're earning it in some way, shape, or form, which I think is good.
Yeah. And do they call you out on that too? Hey, Dad, you need to do push-ups for those?
Sometimes. Growing up, I'd have them on my back and doing push-ups with them on my back, teach them at a very young age. I freaking tore my pec like a year and a half ago. So the past year and a half, slowly rebuilding this back to get back. They could probably beat me in push-ups right now.
Yeah, my two boys are like little balls of muscle. So that's not going to be long before, especially they both want to get into jiu-jitsu. It's only going to be a matter of time before I'm getting my butt kicked by these two little balls of muscle. Like right now, part of me is not wanting to get them in there because I can contain both of them at the same time without an issue. But once they learn about torsion and their strength and how to use it, I'm going to be a hurting unit.
Oh yeah, 100%. If you can get them into this one-on-one type of sports, I think it's awesome for them.
Yeah. Right now, my oldest loves golf. I'm ordering my last two pieces to our golf simulator that we put in the garage. And they're stoked about that. What a pain in the butt. I had to build the wall in there for it to set it all up. And I'm
to have at the house though, that you can do it again.
What is something that you're like really struggling at right now that you're just in the season that just like being a dad in this particular realm has just been really a hard thing for you to do?
I think it's sometimes it's just the mindset of kid can be super freaking annoying. And it was not that they're meaning to be, but like showing frustration because you're tired or whatever else, with how they're being annoying. For the most part, I'm with them a lot. When I'm not working, I'm pretty much with the kids, taking them to sports. And I think it's the constant, they're always asking for something more. And you always want to go hide in the closet at some point in time just to get away for a little bit. Maybe just being more cognizant of, again, it's a period of time we're going through now. Just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. And I completely understand that. I'm in that same exact boat where it's like this. Just yesterday, there was something that Adam said. And I looked at him and I said, you clearly are getting angry over it. And I just immediately was like upset about the way he reacted to something. Like, you're just making something. And I was like, Adam, calm yourself down. Like, your son is not just making something. Like, it was just like he's being an innocent 9-year-old kid. And sure, he could have thought through things a little bit better, but like, my reaction, is that going to help the situation at all? Come on, Dad, what are you doing?
When they're being like that certain way, and then almost you're making it worse because you hate the way that they're acting right there, and you're just like, no.
Yeah.
Let's do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and I haven't figured out a good way to really calm myself down in those situations, like to really just like catch that it's happening and then fix my thought process before it happens. And sometimes I wonder if it's just, am I like looking back at it on myself? Am I getting the right amount of sleep? Am I eating the right types of foods? Am I putting myself in the right environment to allow that type of thing to fester in my body? Because I know that when I'm hungry, it's a much shorter fuse than when I'm not hungry, right? I don't know. Like, it's probably a lifestyle thing.
And why also we're humans. We got to give ourselves grace.
No, we're not. We are not. No.
It's not like we're beating the kids that often.
I know. It's only once in a while. There was a comedian that I was listening to a long time ago, just before I had kids, like a long time ago, where he was like, I hate the fact that they tell us that we can't beat our kids. But you know what they don't say? They don't say you can't trip your kids. So when my kids are acting crazy and they're running around, he goes off on this whole thing. And he's like, when you kick that footstool in front of them, they trip over it. Ah, man, you tripped right over the footstool. That's terrible. If only somebody had told you not to run around the house with all this stuff. And I was like, that's valid. If it's just an accident the kids happen to do, what are you going to do? Like, this is just what they do.
Right. When you grew up, did you get beat?
No. Nope.
Yeah,
Thankfully, I did not. Yeah.
Yeah, we got beat a little bit. It wasn't too bad. Got the belt sometimes. The old wooden spoon. When my mom would do it, you would just you'd be laughing, but you had to make it seem like you were crying. Hers.
Yep, of course. Yeah, my dad got beat a lot when he was younger, so I think that he just refused to even have that be a part of the tools. So that was one thing that he got it pretty bad. So it was one of those that I'm thankful, but also curious what would have happened if had he. Or had that been an option? Because it's one of those, you never know, right? It goes back to, I hope the seeds that I'm planting now don't create a thorny bush. I always wonder what could be if that would have happened. Because there's a lot of my friends that sure did, but it was never on the table in my house, thankfully.
Person I couldn't even imagine doing it would be like, maybe when they get older and he's a teenager and he's trying
to show how strong he is. Yeah.
Strong he is. Old man strength.
Yeah, but you don't know about this old man strength. That's a different story.
Let me spoil you. Let me tell you.
I remember one time with my son, there are two specific instances that stick out in my brain as like big mistakes on my part. Is like one, he was like 3 at the time, my oldest, sitting on my lap, and he was doing something and he was playing with a toy that he shouldn't have been. And I ripped it out of his hand and I threw it across the room because I was trying to talk to him. And I sat there and I felt like the biggest pile of garbage in the world. So I'm like telling my son how to control his emotions and do all this stuff. And here I am launching his toy across the room. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And then the second time was when the second moment that sticks in my brain really bad is when I don't remember what he was doing. I don't remember if he hit me or he was doing something that he shouldn't have been. And I spanked his bottom real hard. And again, felt terrible. Right. I just looked at my wife and I was like, I literally am teaching him not to hit by hitting him. Like that it just burned so hard in my brain about how terrible of a job I was doing as a dad. And I was like, I don't know if I could ever do that again. So we need to chat about this and figure something out because I couldn't, it hurt so bad to do that.
Yeah.
It was dreadful. It always makes me curious, like how, and again, I don't know if it's just the way I was my upbringing or what I see and saw in my life at those times, but man, oh man, I just feel like I'm a failure when I go through those moments as a dad. As I'm sure like every dad does.
Again, I think our parents' generation, the generation before them, they all did. It was normal.
Yes.
That's how you discipline. And as time goes on, we evolve, and now it's I didn't even imagine doing that, even though it happened to me. I was like, no big deal. But for me to do, I'm like, oh, I couldn't imagine doing that.
Yeah. And so do you think that we're going to go down there's that saying, and this is by no means saying that we need to encourage people to beat their kids, but there is that saying that hard times create strong men, create good times, create weak men, create bad times. So are we at a stage right now where those strong men that had rough times, they became strong men who then led us, and are we on that weak man portion where we're going to create like a problem? I feel like we're kind of in that.
I think the majority of the population that's certainly the cycle that we're in.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast, and welcome back for you, Todd Dexheimer.
I think it's so important to have a culture, a family culture. We talk to our kids about our expectations, and this is what the Dexheimers do. This is, hey, you made a bad choice, and that's not how Dexheimers act. And so we will try to set up, and we're not perfect by any means, but we try to set up a culture in our family that we think our kids should, or our whole family should follow. And we make plenty of mistakes. And I don't know, the story is yet to be told on how our kids turn out. I think they're going to turn out great. I think they're going to be amazing adults, and I think they're going to run awesome businesses. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, time will tell. Well, all we can do is all we can do, and push to do it. In the grand scheme of things, the way I look at family as a business, and how each one of my kids is their own little business, and I'm the CEO of that business. In the grand scheme of things, I'm responsible for whatever happens while they're under my house. Eventually, they're going to be their own CEO, and they're going to go out, and hopefully I'm just sitting on the board of advisors and loving my life as a board of advisors guy. And they call me whenever they need me, and they can run their own life. But while they're under my house, like, I'm the CEO. I'm responsible for what happens. I need to make sure that business is operating the way it's supposed to be.
I think that's such a valuable mindset that you just said right there. Look at yourself as a CEO of your family. And dads need to step up and be the CEOs of their family. For sure. There's too many dads, in my opinion, that are just not in charge. And they're just, they sit back, they let mom handle it, or they let the kids run the show.
Yeah.
And that is not a good place for dads to be in. And I think there are way too many dads in this country and across the world that are like that are just not engaged with the family, that don't have a backbone, that don't stand up for things, that don't run and lead their family. Men should be leading their family. I firmly believe that, and I know it's old school thought, but I firmly believe that men should be leading their family and be in charge of their family. And I'm not saying that you're stepping all over your wife and you're not allowing your wife to do anything. No, you're still the leader, but you and your wife are working together. Okay, so that's valuable, right? But I think there's way too many men that aren't doing their job as a parent, and that's really a disservice to the family.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think society has set us up in a way to demasculate the men anyways. And they don't want to do that now because they don't want to be toxic, and they don't want to be looked at as a terrible person or as a sexist, whatever, by being that male who's leading. But it runs better if somebody is leading, and it needs to. And in my opinion, again, I hated I've said it 100 times. So it just, the way when I heard it this time, for some reason I heard it differently. When you said it's old school, and I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be a way that we can word that's not old school, because that would imply that's no longer a relevant thing. But it super is. It sounds like it should be from the 60s, because that's the way the culture right now has said that it is. Like, oh, that's super. Like, that's from the 60s, the man leading, the 50s. We don't need that anymore. We need just whatever. That's gotten us to where we are, where like over 50% of kids, or somewhere around 50% of kids, are being born to a single parent household. Because we don't have men who are leading anymore. Like, we don't have men who are taking claims of their mistakes and saying, hey, I did this and I'm responsible. We've completely allowed for a lack of responsibility for men, which leads to a bunch of like craziness. It just boggles my mind. And yeah, I think we need to have men across the board step up a lot more and lead their families and lead. And again, like you said, I like the image of this guy I used to listen to. He'd said that like Eve was taken from Adam's rib because that's where the woman belongs, right at his side. It's not behind you. It's not in front of you. It's at your side. You guys are running the family together, but there has to be a buck that stops somewhere. There's a president and there's a vice president because it stops with the president. That's where it's at. There's a CEO, there's a COO, but it stops with the CEO. There's got to be somewhere where it stops, and somebody has to lead it. Step up to the plate and lead your family. Be the leader of your family and lead the way it should be led, not just this passive nonsense that goes on today. It drives me bonkers.
When you don't
Speaking of driving me bonkers.
I'm sorry. And when you don't have a strong male in the family, I think that's where the family falls apart. And that's a generalized statement. There's certainly probably great families without a strong male character, but I don't think that's the vast majority of the cases.
Yeah.
And I know it's not. It's proven. Like
I think that's one of the things
study after study.
Exactly. Those outliers actually prove the fact, right? It's the same thing. Like you're going to find a single parent household where the kids thrive, but that is the bell curve. You're going to find some on one side, you're going to find some on the other side, but a majority of them are going to be in that middle where there is a strong 2-parent household with a mother and a father, and those are going to be like it's like the number one predictor. I wish I could have the study in front of me. I should just have it printed right here because I mentioned it multiple times, but it's like the number one predictor of making sure that your kids will not end up in jail. They will go to college. They will graduate high school. Well, not will go to college, but will graduate high school. They're not going to end up in jail, is having a present father at home, right? Like you're setting your kids up for such success by just having a present father at home they may not even be the best leader, but just having them at home increases those chances. Imagine what happens when you have one that's at home that actually leads and wants to make sure that they're getting what's best for their kids.
There's a statistic out there, and I don't know the exact percentage, but it's something like 80% of kids will go to church after they leave the household if dad went to church on Sundays, where only 30% of kids will go to church if mom went to church when they were a kid, but dad did not show up. And I got the statistics wrong. I know I did, but it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
And it shows you that it's super important, again, for the father to be a leader in the family. It's really important.
I hate the word balance, but how do you align those two to make sure that the business is running the way it needs to be and you're still able to lead your family the way it needs to be led, so that, you know, obviously we're still going to, you already said it, have that email at 6:30 in the afternoon or 6:30 in the evening that we're going to be sending right after we get, right when we sit down for dinner, we realize that we needed to respond to something. But like, how do you on a daily basis manage those two things side by side?
This is my continual struggle, by the way, because I want to be very present in my kids' lives, and I want to be thought of as a great dad. And I want my kids, when they're older, I just want to be a great dad, right? I just want my kids to think I was a great dad. I want to think to myself, I was a great dad. I want to be an amazing husband to my wife. But at the same time, so all those things are important to me. At the same time, I say, if I'm an excellent business owner, if my kids watch me running a successful business, then I'm teaching them value, right? Then I'm teaching them that it's important to create, to do things, to create impact. Look, I saw today somebody, you should be out there working for passive income. And once your passive income generates more than your expenses, you're financially free, and then do what you want and when you want and so on. And that's the ultimate goal in life. And I looked at that and I said, that's not my ultimate goal in life, because I created that when I was 28 years old. And I don't want that. Not that I don't want that. I don't want to just do whatever the heck I want and be lazy and play. And that to me is not impactful. And so I created that when I was 28, but I never took a step back. I continue to push and grind, and I still do to this day, because I think there's value in creating. I think there's value in impacting. I think there's value in making this world a little bit better with whatever I can do. I'm not saying I'm changing the world, but I am one little impact at a time. If I can positively impact one person, I've made a big difference in this world. And if I can do it to thousands of people, I've made a really big difference in this world. And so I want to I want my kids to see me doing that. And I think there's a lot of value there too. So it's always a struggle with me. how much time am I spending on creating impact? And that's volunteering, that's building my business, that's all that kind of stuff, right? And there's also the impact on my kids, me being present in their lives and really interacting with them and ignoring the business side, ignoring the volunteering for other people's side, that type of stuff. So there's this balance, and it's tough to balance because, like you said, it's a bad word, like balance. You're never going to balance. But I think there's seasons in life where I spend a little bit more time with my kids. There's also seasons in life where I'm spending a little bit less time with my kids and more on the impact side, not only of my business, but of volunteering and things like that. So I struggle. It's an internal struggle all the time. There's times where I say, maybe I should just slow my business down for the next, my son's 11. I only got him in the house for 7 more years. And my daughter's 15. I only got her in the house for 3 more years, Adam. Holy crap, dude.
Yeah.
Maybe I should just slow it down. But just crank it back a little bit and spend more time with my kids. But then I think, man, maybe I should just crank it down and crank it forward a little bit and spend more time on my business. Not maybe more time or less time with my kids, but just focus on that business and show my kids what a good, strong work ethic looks like. You struggle.
I am super excited to talk to Jay Bourgana. So I want to dig into the question you asked today, or one of the topics you mentioned. I don't think it was about today, but maybe it was the cliques and the different things like coordinating with so my oldest is in a little church camp right now. He goes every day for a few hours, and we're on the drive home yesterday. He was like, man, there's one kid in there that's really annoying today. Like it was like, he was just like joking and like laughing too much and like doing silly things. So we had to sit there and talk about, okay, sometimes like maybe it started off as just one small thing and somebody laughed and they wanted to turn it into something bigger. Like, how do we know when we're starting to do things that just to impress other people versus because this is naturally ourselves, and like how people interact with each other and the types of groups people get into. So I would love to hear your take on what specifically you were teaching the kids about what's going to be going on in these groups and what to be aware of.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing that I like to have them do is just get in the habit of observing behavior and just develop the pattern recognition of behavior. Because what they're going to, once they start doing that, they're going to notice that those profiles start repeating themselves. And then you start seeing the same pattern with certain people. There's just certain people that are just bullies. There's just people that are like, like to do bad stuff. And then there's some people that are like very talkative. And there's just some people that are like very strong-willed and want to control the group. And then there's some people that are very chill, laid back, free spirits. And then there's some people that are like jokesters, but they're like mean. And then there's just people that are, you know what I mean? So just observe. That's the one thing that I want them to do. Just observe people. Observe so you can notice the patterns and you notice the differences and recognize who is what. And then the way I tell them to think about it is just like when we sit outside, we watch these birds, we watch these little critters, lizards, things happening. They're different species. And this is how human beings, like all these different personality profiles are just different species. They are who they are. There's nothing good or bad about them. They are who they are. So you have to accept them the way they are. Now, when you accept the bully as a bully, the bully has a function in life, the same way an alligator has a function in the environment. So every profile has a job in the environment. And now, number one is you recognize it, you accept it for what it is. You're not upset by the fact that they are who they are. You can't, that's silly. Why would you be upset at an alligator for being an alligator or a snake to be a snake? So you just accept that. And then you navigate, you go toward the people that you want to hang out with. So when you try to develop your group of friends, you have to have a vision, a goal. What kind of friends do I want? That's why the fact that we moved a lot. We moved from within California, we moved a lot. And then we moved to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii to South Florida. Jen and I have been married for 12 years. We moved like 6 times. And so my kids were challenged by having to rebuild their networks. And the last time, the hardest one was when we were in Hawaii because it's completely different culture, subculture. So they were challenged. So they were upset. I can see their little sadness when we were there. And I'm like, what's the problem? He said, oh, we miss our friends. And lucky for us, their two best friends that lived next to us in California also moved overseas. So thank God they couldn't blame me. Yeah. If we stayed, they wouldn't have been there. So I explained to them, it's like, what is it that you miss? So we miss our friends. Okay, so you miss the connection. You miss having connection with friends. Yes. Right. Now, what do we want? We want friends that we have connection with. Great. What kind of friends do we want? My kids was like, I don't know. And so this is at a time where Jack was 4, Isabel was 6. So they're telling me, well, I don't know. I was like, okay, do you want good friend, bad friend? Good friend. Do you want a funny or boring? Fun. You want active or inactive? Do you want kids who like the things you like or don't like anything you like? So we created this ideal friend profile. And literally we wrote it down for each kid. Jack has his own, Isabel has her own. Now that we created this ideal friend profile, now where are we going to find him? There's playgrounds, gyms, trampoline places, whatever. And then how do we qualify the kids in these places to match them with the ideal profile? I don't know. The kids are like, I don't know. It's like, okay, we ask questions. What questions do I ask? It's, okay, hi, my name is Chad. I'm 4. How old are you? I like jiu-jitsu. What do you like? I watch Garfield. What do you watch? I live in Colina. Where do you live? Just simple questions. And if the kid within the first couple questions is looking in the eye and smiling, that's probably a good profile. If they're distracted and doesn't even know his name or doesn't even know how old he is, move on. Yeah. And then now that you identified 1 or 2 in that playground that are good, what do? You got to get their information. We talked about funnels earlier. You got to get the email and phone number. And he said, how do I do that? You got to make an offer. What are you talking about? I was like, there's a mom and dad nearby. Yes, great. You're going to go say, hi, my name is Chad. I'm 4-year-old. I'd like to invite Joey over here to a pizza party or to my birthday. What's a good phone number? And literally so we scripted this. We role played it. And then they had a quota of 2 numbers a week. So they had like a goal that they had to hit. So 2 phone numbers a week. And I can tell you, dude, within 6 weeks, they had 25 friends. Wow. Like our house became the hub for all the kids within 6 weeks of arriving there. And then now when you have 20 kids outside your house, what happens? They attract 20 other kids. Yeah. Because that becomes the place. So the whole time why we had like kids in front of our house every day. Just from that exercise. And so it started out with actually knowing what you're looking for, accepting people who they are, and then just iterate. Well, I had this friend, it was great at first, and then it sucked later. So let's go find, how do we iterate? What do we do? How do we change it? How do we change it? How do we change it? And I remember this, I tell the kids about Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett a lot. And so Warren Buffett has this thing around the best way to build a network is to be lazy about it, where he enters a group of 100 people, he'll have a conversation with all 100. He can tell very quickly the top 5 high quality people, and he can tell very quickly the bottom 5 lowest quality people, but he has no idea the 90 in the middle, who they are. And he treats the 90 the same way he treats the bottom 5. So he moves on. So he keeps the top 5 and then moves on to another room with 100 people. And over time, that high quality group just compounds because those 5 attracts other 5. And then now he built like a high quality network. And so I teach the kids the same things. You don't need to change people. You don't need to fix people. You don't need to try to force yourself in a group. You can create your own group. You can enter high quality groups. You have all the options available to you. So if someone is bothering you, you don't have to be bothered by it. They are who they are. Yeah. And then, but if someone puts your hand on you, then all bets are off. Yeah. And so I tell you the whole thing about bullies. So my kids know that if someone puts your hand on you, if someone try to harm you, whatever, they have full authority to destroy. So my kids had problems. My kids go to jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts. As soon as they were little, I let them hit me as hard as they can. So they're used to hitting people hard. Like my uncle, they played with him once in a while in pool and they destroyed him. Like you say, he goes to the chiropractor every time. And every time. And so they hit hard. But sometimes they have problems when they get bullied. They have a problem harming someone because they want to be good kids. They don't want to get in trouble with the instructor. They don't want to get in trouble with the teacher, or they don't want to get in trouble in the neighborhood with the HOA or something. And so I have to push them that if someone is trying to bully you, try to harm you, you got to not only defend yourself, but you got to destroy. So they don't ever come near you or come near your friends. And so I had to literally bribe them. I had to, number one, write a letter explaining that I take responsibility for everything. Give them like money in case I get a complaint. If I get a complaint from your teacher, you get $50. If you get an ambulance call, you get $100. So just the fact that they were like, oh my God, I'm going to make $100 crushing somebody. Now they're like leaning in, and then just by leaning in, the bully falls back.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it. And then they never had problems with bullies ever again, because they knew that if they were willing to stand up for themselves, and because the bully can think, if kids trying not to avoid a fight, they think that they're scared. So the bully goes, steps in. But if you're not scared and you step in, he's, listen, dude, I'm a machine. I will take you down. They're not going to mess with you. They're going to go pick with someone else. And so it was interesting to see that mindset shift in their head. But yeah, again, just knowing that the type of people that fit with it for you, that work, that number one, learn to recognize people.
Yeah.
Have that pattern recognition. Understand the people that fit with you and your personality and your values. And then just have a process how to acquire those friends.
Yeah.
Just like we acquire customers or acquire talent in our life, the same way, have a process on how to acquire those friends. And then if you have that process, they're unstoppable. They feel confident. They can make friends anywhere, anytime, parachuted anywhere. They can build a network.
For sure.
If you develop a network of high quality people, and your life's going to be richer, your kids' life is going to be richer. It's going to create, not only it's going to create really good feeling, good serotonin, because you have all these friends and you can enjoy being around them, and also you can help each other. So I think there's a higher goal behind building relationships, building network, not only for yourself, but also for your kids. The same way the money is a currency, relationships are a currency that could be leveraged. So there are a lot of layers to the value of being in a relationship with people and staying in a relationship with people. And if you're focused on that high quality quadrant, and yes, there's going to be an A and a B, if you will. And I keep my connection to the A's strong and I stay in touch with the B's, I think I'm okay. And if I can teach that to my kids and I can create opportunities for my friends, for my family, and for my kids, absolutely. I think it's the same mechanics of the job or the business exist here, but the emotional piece or the intent behind it is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess the emotional side is always the hard part for me, because I have one emotion and it's just for my family. That's the only one that I find, really. I bury all the other ones. But having that emotion is important.
So channel that. Yeah, absolutely. So channel that emotion because for my family, I need to do this.
Yeah.
I need to create a network for my kids. I need to create opportunities for my kids. I need to create a high quality contact list for my kids. And I mean, the easiest way to get kids opportunities, whether it is job or getting into a college or seeing the best surgeon or seeing this, is to have the one person that has access to those dates. You know what I mean? So I'm doing this to create access. It's the highest leverage. That, to me, there are contexts that cannot be created with money. You can have the money but not have access.
Yeah.
But building a relationship where we talk about the six levels of connection or 6 separations, whatever. And I think in our world, it's probably less than that. It's 3 of them. You have 3 levels of separation from anybody in the world. Why not build that for that legacy for our children, for our family?
Yeah, for sure. I
I had to write a note while you're talking about that is what do I provide to the person? Because it's one of the things that I am always doing or always used to do in my other life is it's what can that person provide for me, which is mentally where I always struggle. I'm like, I don't want that to be the genesis of my relationship is trying to figure out what that person can provide for me. And you already hit on it before of give to people, which I love doing. Like I absolutely like, it's one of my favorite things in the world to do is give and watching their faces with zero expectation of getting anything in return. But yet for some reason, when I look at relationships, I don't look at it that way. I don't look at it as like, I give to people I know, give to people I don't know. But I appreciate it. I'm working on that. That helped me out a lot in kind of working through some of my mental thoughts about it because it's made it harder for me to even communicate that to my kids because I don't do it well myself. So it's hard for me to communicate to the kids. So I greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't really take much. Sometimes it's just like having a conversation or listening to somebody or spending time with them and connecting. You know, you never know. There's some things that you do well in your life that you can help someone else, you know, on that side of their life. And sometimes we've given them the opportunity to help you because they want to contribute. That helps that they get the joy out of that. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And then when my kids get back, I'll let them know because I give them a hard time all the time. I'm like, dude, you were hanging out with this homeschool group. You told me about one of these kids. Did you get their number? Did you talk to them at all? Nope. Yeah. No. Did you, like, what level of connection did you try to get with them? Yeah. Would you like them to come to the house and play in the pool with you? Yeah. How are they supposed to get in touch with you? You gotta be able to go do these things. But my oldest is getting better. But it's like literally a constant reminder and then a constant role play. Like before they go, I'm like, all right, let's go role play with me. Hi, my name is Jack. I'm 8. How old are you? I live here. Where do you live? I like to play this. What do you play? I go to, where do you go to school? I do this. Do you do that? So it's an ongoing exercise. And actually, there's a really good book. It's very thin. It's a fiction called Go for No. And essentially teaches people, like I used to give it to all my sales guys. And it just teaches people to not worry about the outcome and then just go and make a touch, have a conversation. And the idea is that most people there's a graphic in there. It's very simple. Most people think of success over here and failure over here. And so they're trying to run away. They're in the middle and they're running away from failure, going towards success. So that's how they think. I'm going to run away from failure towards success. And the way things work is that you run through failure to get to success. So you have to go, you have to do something, fail a lot, and then get to success. Because if you're trying to avoid failure, you're never going to try anything, and then you're never going to make it to success. So it's the same thing in the relationships, is that you have to put yourself out there. You have to get rejected. You have to get through failure in order for you to get. So a lot of times kids don't ask the questions, because it feels, I may get rejected. And so I'm just going to go with what's coming easy, which is you're playing over here, I'm playing over here. And then all of a sudden we're playing together. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then that's easy. We don't have to talk. And my son used to say this to me all the time. I say, what do you guys talk about? He says, Dad, kids don't talk. Adults talk, kids play. And he says, like, adults talk, kids play. And I'm like, no, dude. Everybody talk and then play. That's funny.
So I think that's like the part that it's a constant exercise. And then when you find opportunities when, Isabel was telling me last time, man, I wish I got the phone number from that girl because she was really cool. And I feel bad not having stayed in contact with her. That kind of like now she's learning that lesson. She's having her failure as early as possible. Now she's going to remember that. And then she's going to next time she's going to make sure that we talk about it. It's like, listen, the first 2 days, like for example, they're going to camp next week, Monday, Tuesday is the first 2 days. You need to talk to as many people as you can. So when you talk to somebody, as soon as you find out they're cool, you got to say, okay, Johnny, I really like you. I'm going to go talk to this person and I'm going to come back. Is that okay? Yes. Great. And then go talk to the other person. I need you to move around the room. I don't want you to be stuck with Johnny for 3 days because you're stuck with Johnny for 3 days. You're not going to meet all the other 50 kids. So I want you to, the first 2 days, I want like the rundown on all the kids. If you don't do that, you're not going the third day. I'm telling you, it's just a waste.
Yeah.
We're just wasting money here. Like they know I'm serious. So they know I'm serious. If they don't get the contact info, they're not going back.
That's funny. That's awesome.
So the first 2 days, they got to get the list, and then they can have fun. I don't care after that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a load of sense. And I wish that I would have had this conversation with you last week before my son was at camp all this week. So really appreciate that. I'll force him to do that today. Yes. Today's the last day. So we'll see how it goes. But come home with a phone number, buddy. Come home with a phone number.
They bribe him with the next camp or the next day. You know, that's
for sure.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Majority of dads or parents in general, majority of them do what either they do the same thing that their parents did, or they do the opposite. So they're either going toward it or away from it. And I would invite people to think differently and then start from first principles and just think, okay, what do I want to achieve with my kids? Like at the base thing of it, what do I want to achieve with my kids? What would success look like? And so that's super important because most parents don't know that. And then so they do a lot of things and they hope that whatever sticks to the wall, that's going to be our thing. And unfortunately, they may do well in one side, but then they fail at other things. And for me, I need like a holistic approach. I need the kid to be complete from all different sides. And at this age, between 4 and 12 is like the best time to mold the kids in a way that to create that. So you have this 8 years, maybe 10, where you can create those things. And for me, I want my kids to be productive. I want them to be productive, meaning self-sufficient. They're contributing positively to society. So that's one. Number 2, I want them resilient, capable of overcoming challenges and tough. I want them to be curious, constantly learning, or a growth mindset. And I want them to be responsible. And by responsible, I want that they recognize that they're in charge of their own happiness. It's not outside. Nothing's happening outside of them. Everything is happening inside of them. Anything they want in life is within them. And they can generate their own happiness. They can manifest their own future. They can do all the things they want to do. It's all an inside game. If they got those 4 things, they're good. They're going to be, most people do well with 1, but if they got those 4, if they're looking to be productive, they're tough, they're curious, and they take responsibility for their life, happiness, and future, I think that they're going to be okay.
Man, that was
and everything we talk about, from my kid's perspective, everything we talk about is from the 3 frameworks. Anything we do, if we put goals, if we're setting goals or we're setting vision boards, everything is happening from health, wealth, and relationships. We want our health to be at peak level, meaning I got to eat well, I got to sleep well, I got to drink water, I got to keep my mind clear of nonsense and have a clear mind, positive thoughts. From wealth perspective, I want to learn skills. Like right now, the way they're going to build wealth is by developing skills. So whether it is playing with learn how to code or learn, what is that software to do graphics and stuff? What is the graphics software that's online right now? Canva, yeah. So learn how to use Canva, learn how to code, learn how to sell, learn how to make stuff, 3D print, all kinds of stuff. Those are all skills that they can develop, that they can generate money with, and or to generate wealth with. Learn how much to spend versus how much you're making, keeping your expenses low, generating more than you can consume. Don't consume too much. Invest in assets, don't buy liabilities, all this knowledge around wealth. So right now, just developing that knowledge. And then the last one is a relationship. And that's what we spend a lot of time on, is building a relationship, keeping those relationships high quality, acquiring and the retaining high quality relationships. Like when a lot of people talk about legacy, talking about transfer of wealth or transfer of stuff, and they think of the material, the money, they think of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And really none of it matters. What really matters is that transfer of wisdom, the transfer of insight, the transfer of I'm this cell that came out of two other cells. I'm a piece of DNA. I think of myself as a code of DNA that came from my parents, right? And then I have my experience and I crossed oceans and I learned so much and I did all this stuff to get here, right? And I'm trying to transition that code within me to my kids.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I'm trying to plug something to my hard drive to them so they can transfer all that stuff, all that wisdom, all that insight. And so I need to transfer the good stuff, not the bad stuff. So I got to keep the viruses over here. I got to keep the nonsense. So I'm trying to transfer the good stuff, not the bad. So I need to know for myself what's good, what's bad, and then put that in a separate folder in my brain and then copy paste that folder. Make sure that it doesn't have any viruses in it. Here's the biggest thing that a lot of people miss is that transfer only works if you have connection. A lot of people don't have connection. A lot of people don't spend enough time to have deep connection. So you really have to have like deep connection. You have to have that cable has to be like big and thick and transfers really well. So it doesn't lose the data on the way. You don't want to have those like cheap buy at 7-Eleven type cables. The original brand. So that connection has to be strong. And that's where that time together, that not that we're in the same room at the same time, or not like, I'm like, I hear a lot of guys will say, I spend a lot of time with my kids. I just took them to this thing, or I just took them to that thing, or I just went to this mini golf, or we just played this. And no, none of that. Just be able to sit in silence in a place and just be with each other and not be distracted by games, not be distracted by TV, not be distracted by some entertainment, some dopamine rush that coming from, trampolines or whatever. That's not connection. Is when you literally sit and then you just be with each other and having relationships, or you're just not talking at all, just sitting and connect, like your kid on you, sitting on you, and just observing the birds. I mean, that's what connection. That's where you strengthen that connection. If you sit with your kid for an hour, sit your kid on you and then just observing birds for an hour, I can tell you that kid's gonna absorb anything you tell.
I am stoked to talk to Dennis Callan. Really looking forward to chatting with him.
My kids are upset because of the combined family, we finished the basement and put some bedrooms down there. But it used to be a massive space where they had crazy gun battles at FTW. So now they like theater and they like the pool table and the other stuff we got for them down there, but they don't have the massive space to have their battles anymore. So we may have to take it outside. But yeah, no, I'm all about them experience thing. I forget that guy that works with beams, but the English guy who just says, let your kids do dangerous things carefully. And it just, I was never a helicopter parent. I was just like, yep. And they're like, everyone's like, he's at the top of the monkey bars. Yeah, I see him. He's good. Good, fine. Where's that? He's gonna fall and get a bump and maybe a broke, but yeah, no, like all over him all the time. I want them to explore. I want them to reach their limits and push themselves. So yeah, we do some cool, where we go? Lake George. We're jumping off some pretty high cliffs.
Nice.
Our parents, are you sure you wanted to go up there? And I'm like, as long as he's good with it, I'm not going to drag him all.
Yeah.
They're like, Dad, watch. And it was awesome. So yeah, I have no problem about letting my kids do stuff that are going to push their limits and let them figure out what they're comfortable with. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. If they want to give it a whirl, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say yes. There are very few things that I'm not going to let them do, right? They ride the dirt bikes and the 4-wheelers and they do some crazy things on there. They're climbing trees constantly. My son, I don't remember if I've mentioned this on the podcast at all, but recently my son was riding my 4-wheeler and was racing his brother who was on the dirt bike. So the 5-year-old's on the dirt bike riding around, and then the oldest is on my 4-wheeler riding around, not paying the greatest attention. And it's one of those that you got to learn to look through your turns type of thing. Like, don't look at what you don't want to, like if you're trying to avoid a tree, don't look at the tree because you're going to drive right into the tree.
So he took out 2 panels of fence, just destroyed into it, has all these bruises on his chest from running into the handlebars. And I just happened to look up just right because I was mowing the lawn at the time, or I was weed whacking. So I look up and I see this fence over, and I see Adam buckled over, holding his chest. I'm like, oh boy, what just? But it's one of those. Okay, what did we learn? He's, I was going a little too fast. It hurt. And I'm like, yeah, it hurt a little bit. But now he gets back on it. He pays more attention, and it is what it is. So it's not. I don't stop him from doing it just because he got hurt. And that was one of those things too. Is like that I've always tried to. Like when Adam was riding the dirt bike, because it's a little 50cc dirt bike. So when he was like 5 years old, like Rourke is, he crashed into a tree once and he was like, I don't want to stop. And I was like, no, we got to get back on. You're not going to end with a crash, because now the next time you come out, that's where your brain is. So sure enough, he gets back on the dirt bike and starts riding that thing around the yard and having a great time with it. And it was like, okay, great job now. And then he was like, no, I don't want to stop now. Because once he got back on and realized, okay, this isn't so bad, he doesn't want to stop. Life is going to throw that stuff at you, no matter what. Like life is going to punch you in the face. So it's, you might as well get ready for it when you're younger.
100%. Like we had a conversation with my girlfriend now, and it's crazy the parenting styles of what you grew up with and what she grew up with, and how you want to handle it. And her kids are young, and she's been like, hey, have at it. I'm not like take them as your kids, and it's been awesome. But I'm like, hey, just let him. Like her son is the youngest, and he's 5 next week, but he's used to being babied, and I'm like, baby, we got to stop this. And so it's just rub a little dirt on it. And she's seen, wow, this is different. I don't need to run over him. He's fine. A minute later, he just wants that attention. Yeah. I think we talked like the helicopter parent, the parents who are just running over to the kid on the soccer field. He's running onto the field when he's just like a simple ankle or something like that. Then that can be game in a minute. There's just no need for that. I feel like we don't want to raise kids that way, and we can make them learn so much more if they can just figure that out for themselves and learn what their limits are. I think that makes a huge difference when they're young.
So what has been your favorite part about running a business while being a dad?
I think we touched on it earlier, just being available, like being there. And actually it's unbelievable. Right? When you go to, I don't know how these people do it, and credit to them and credit to their bosses, but you go to something like every school event now, whether it's a Christmas concert or whatever it is, like all these things are packed. I'm like, how do these people working 9 to 5s, like, how do they get there? What are their bosses are leaving? Like my ex, she can't, like she works in an operating room. She can't get out of there. And I feel bad for the kids whose mom, like they're looking for mom and dad in the audience and they're not there. And for me to have my kids light up when we make eye contact at the Christmas concert or on the field or something like that, just to have that flexibility, no matter how much money I make, that I'm able to be there is probably the best. Like whatever, mortgages aren't isn't the sexiest job in the world. I do well on it and allows me to invest in other things and do things. But the flexibility that it gives me as a business owner, I think is the most important thing that I'm proudest of.
Yeah, sexy things tend to be the things that also go away quickly too. So I think sticking to something that is a solid, always needed type of job is, I think you're better off that way than chasing something sexy. So
the boring job next door, or the millionaire next door.
That's right. That's right. I as we're wrapping up here, I want to pass it over to you to see if there anything that we wanted to cover while we were on the call that we haven't yet, or is there anything that you really wanted to just express while we're chatting?
For me, I think the dads, maybe a shout out to the single dads out there that are doing the work for sometimes too. It's crazy that the circles that I got into after becoming divorced, and actually shout out to the moms out there too that had the bad husbands who are disappeared and doing double duty and being the dad. I thought it's crazy kind of it's being out there and dating and just getting a circle of friends who are single, kind of the stories you hear. But man, for those guys, things like where I was 8-9 years ago and how I thought my life was like all over, and how I just poured myself into my kids, and that became a priority. And to see they're like, oh, you're going to get married again? I'm like, no, never. And just to see the full circle things. And now I've gone from 3 to 5 kids and happy to call those kids my own. And that's the way we've talked about it, is that, hey, I'm going to raise these as my own and call them my kids. I think there's something to be said for those guys just to keep your heads up, and things do work out much better, because I was in a bad spot years ago. I'm just so grateful how things turned out.
Today, I am stoked to talk to a fellow pilot, a fellow dad, Brett Harmeling. You've got one kid and one on the way. What does it look like for you now as far as what that means to lead your family the way that you want to? I warned you before we started that one of the kids would probably show up, and here we are. But what does that mean to you right now?
What it means to me right now is spending as much time with my kids, quality time with my kids that I'm able to, and then to create experiences. There's a story in a book that Jim Shields wrote that's really powerful, and it creates this perspective, and it's called 18 Summers. And it's you literally get, and he also has the family boardrooms. So it's treat your family like a business, like work on it.
Yeah.
If it's not going well, fix it. Are you going to let it bankrupt? And I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing specifically in America is the broken family.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the many beautiful reasons that I've decided to become Catholic was that there's a non-negotiable clause about being divorced, right?
Yeah.
And so that works well for someone like me that has curiosity about what if? And so there is no what ifs, right? It is what it is. And so me being able to provide for my family in a way where I'm able to actually be like the nucleus of the family versus I'm like my wife who does an unbelievably extraordinary job of being the mom and nurturing and loving, and just I tell her almost daily, I don't know how you do this.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like so impressed. And so that's a good testament, because that's why I married my wife, because I knew that she would make remarkable partner to grow into life with, to grow through whatever we go through in life.
Yeah.
And then become better humans in the process. Like I'm never going to be too smart or too wise to like continue growing and learning for my kids even, right? And I think whether we're an adult or a kid, we all have a shared human experience that's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And we have basic human needs that need to get met. And when those human needs get derailed, people get hurt.
Yeah.
And that's when the anger and the sadness and all that stuff comes up. And it's like how to teach your amazing kids how to deal with that stuff so that they can use it as power, right? Use it like, oh, I feel this anger or sadness coming up. How can I turn this anger or sadness, which is actually just energy that's trapped inside me, how can I transform this into something powerful and shift it into the right lane so that I can actually respond versus react to the situation at hand?
Your oldest is 2.5 years old, but you seem to have put a lot of work into this before you even started having kids. So how do you look at responding versus reacting, and how are you trying to apply that even now with a 2.5-year-old?
Yes, I think women are better than men. I think men have a blow off valve, and once something goes off and it's not like how they expect it to be, it doesn't go well. And so the first thing that I've trained myself to do is to just take 1 to 3 conscious breaths before I actually say anything or do anything. Even if it's, I need to do something fast. It's like the whole Navy SEALs saying slow is smooth is fast. And so making sure it happens in a good way, in a clean way. We're going to wound our kids, right? It's going to happen. It's almost necessary for the evolution and progression of life, but we can cut them cleanly and we can teach them along the way. And I also have been really honest about owning my own. I apologize to my kid. Say, hey, I'm sorry, buddy, that I reacted the way I did. I love you so much. You're my best friend. And so I'm already creating this relationship, and whether he understands or not doesn't matter, because it's the pure energy and embodiment of truth that he feels from me more than any words that I say. Which is why like the vibrational frequency of authenticity has been studied now pretty frequently. And it's 1,000 times more powerful than the frequency of love. Because I love you, and that's like pretty cool. It feels good. But when you like say it with authenticity, like I will die for you and do anything for you because you're my son, that sounds way cooler and better and feels amazing compared to just I love you.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that for sure. Boy, what is up, little lady? You want to come say hi on camera?
And then when I think back to what we talked about with, when I think back to, going back to the dad conversation, and like, I talk about being wounded and whatnot, and I'm like, and that kind of thing. And this hero's journey, we leave the village, we go through this initiation process. We learn something about ourselves. We go through this mastery about it. We learn how to implement it and integrate it. And then we bring it back to our community. It's called the hero's journey, and it just continues in these cycles. And when you're on this journey and you know where you're at, then you can use it as a tool to really provide invaluable insight to your family. And when I'm like, who hurt me the most? It's really my own expectations about how life is supposed to go. That's who hurt me the most, is me. And so I have like I said, my dad doesn't owe me an apology. He doesn't owe me anything. Nobody does, because I take 100% responsibility for my experience of life. I think the best way to set your kids free is to get them learning in ways that inspire them and help engage in their creative thinking. I feel like the school systems that we have in today's world really limit kids' belief systems and ways that they think about like actual reality. Even myself, I just got my MBA from Rice University in 2022. And I'm just going through that experience. It was just like really real, even though it was based on Socratic method, which is, hey, Adam, do you want super speed or super strength? And tell us why. Neither answer is right, but convince us why one is right. And then at the end of that experiment, we'd go around the circle and then everyone would say like why they choose what they chose. Then you could change your answer based on being convinced by other people. So it's like thought leadership and critical thinking, which are like, it's a lost art in our society, honestly. And so there's a really good documentary out right now that you should watch with your 9-year-old, by the way. It's called Finding Joe. It's free. It's on YouTube. It's called Finding Joe. And it is about Carl Jung's hero's journey and about the masks that we have to wear and like the 4 fundamental emotions of humans: joy, fear, anger, and sadness. And so these are the 4 fundamental things. And all the time you're feeling one of those things or several of them. And if you know how you're feeling, then you know what you need to do to change it. And if you believe, and part of it is teaching your kids to take 100%, even though we're their leader, right? Teaching them to take 100% responsibility for their actions and for their life, and challenging them like a game, gamifying it. And all the things I'm saying right now are like my beliefs is what I'm going to do, because I have never done it, but I did get my undergrad in education. And so I do have a passion for teaching. And even in the classrooms, that was my first job out of college, is when I was teaching, I think I inspired a lot of kids that were younger, because I was like, ask a simple question about like, what if it's not? What if that wasn't true? Then what would you do? And it was like, oh my gosh, Mr. Harmeling believes that there's always a third option. And when you believe that, then you never feel stuck. It's amazing. And you feel free. Because I grew up thinking, oh, there's A or B. Like you either a Christian or you're not. And this way of structure, and some structure is healthy, but it's really. And then the most important thing is, I think, for being a dad, is creating this stable foundation so that no matter what happens to my kid, he knows that he can come to me first and feel safe. So bringing psychological safety into the family and into all my businesses. When people feel like they can't be themselves fully, it's over. You're cutting people off at the head, right? Because you're like limiting all of their creativity and all of their ideology. And I'm talking like having your accountant in your vision sessions, because they're going to say some stuff that's probably horrible, but they might give you a piece of gold because their brain works a different way.
Thank you so much for jumping in today. I am thrilled to be chatting with John Edwin. So your family has one leg up in knowing that you, as the leader of the household, the dad in the house, is a Christian. How are you actually communicating that type of faith to your kids to let them choose their own path, right? Because in the long run, we have to have our kids choose their own path. We can't choose it for them. What kind of conversations do you have to encourage it? What sort of activities do you guys do to help keep that on the front of mind?
Yeah. It reminds me of the verse, and I can't tell you the exact reference. You bring a child up in the way he should go, and when he's older, he will not forget it. So when people say, oh, I'm not bringing my kids up in any type of faith or religion, I think that they're really, that's a disservice to your kid, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, yes, my kids will decide on whatever direction they're going to go in life. But we've always been really intentional about church on Sundays. It was interesting going through COVID, because that really hurt a lot of families, and a lot of families still haven't even recovered from staying out of the church. But we've been really big on not just going on Sunday, but our kids going to youth group, getting involved in service projects have been really big. Our church is super service and community oriented. We'll pick every couple months, we'll pick a place where, whether it be the homeless shelter or wherever we go, we clean up a school. There's a lot of different service projects. And so I'm grateful that our church has been involved in. And so we always try and get our kids involved in any type of service project, even if it's around church, even if it's like just building a vegetable garden or whatever it is. We're always pushing our kids, going to vacation Bible school is big. When you're older, to not just go, but then to be one of the volunteers at vacation Bible school. Our kids have all grown up going to a Christian camp, like a sleepaway camp for a week. And that's been instrumental. And this, like last summer, two out of my 3 kids were counselors there, praying with the kids every morning, every night. We pray with our kids. Even as they were older, going to high school, we would stop every night and pray with the kids. And then around the dinner table, something that Christina and I have put into place since all of our kids have been super small is just conversation. And that's one of the things that I wrote, because you guys had asked, what's your favorite thing to do as a family? And for me, it's the 5 of us around the table having dinner and going through the highs and lows of your days. We call them yays and nays because that's how kids can relate. But what's the yays and nays on your day? Then the kids get to openly talk about what was the highlight of their day and also what kind of sucked about their day.
Yeah.
And then we can get in deeper discussions about that either at that time or later. So it's a really great kind of open forum where you can connect with your kids, and because there's a lot of the day that you're not with them and you don't know who they're interacting with or what's going on. And that's just a connection point that kind of gives you an opportunity to step in and be a great example as a parent.
Yeah, I love it. We do the highs and lows as well. Like my 5-year-old on Father's Day, we're over at my parents' house, and he looked at me and says, "Dad." And I was like, "What are you doing? Your highs and lows, Dad, your highs and lows." And I was like, "I'm sorry, completely missed it." And for those just listening, my son was looking up in the air and then putting his head back down. It was rather comical to watch him try to just motion to me to do highs and lows. But I love that they've picked up on it, because we just recently started doing that. And it seems to be something that's enjoyable for them. And it adds for some extra conversation just at the dinner table that maybe before was filled with TV on in the background or something silly. But now it's like you get to connect with the kids at a different level.
Yeah, it's really effective. And also there's like other games to play. For about a year, we did something. Hold on, look, it's with him. Reads. Hold on, I want to show you something. So I was telling some of the guys on one of my pods earlier this week about this game that we used to play. So every Sunday we would have what's called the Snoopy Award. And here's Snoopy.
There he is. I like it.
It says the sky's the limit, he's an astronaut. And so every Sunday, whoever had it the week before would bring it down at dinner and present it to someone else in the family, whether it be one of the other kids or me or Christine, but someone would get the Snoopy Award every week. And that person who had it would recognize someone else in the family for something like some act of kindness that they did that week. And so it might be, "Hey, Adam, I'm going to give you the Snoopy Award. You get it this week for whatever." But it had to be specific. It can't just be, "Oh, you were great." No, it had to be a specific event that person recognized the other person for. And then that person would get the Snoopy Award. They could say a little acceptance speech, and then they would have the Snoopy Award that week. And then the next Sunday, it would move to someone else. So there's something for your listeners. Do a Snoopy Award or whatever type of award.
How do you handle the conversations after, right? Okay, that there were certain things that were said by the coach or certain things that were said by other players that are not acceptable in our family, or that are more detrimental or discouraging rather than encouraging and building. How do you have the conversations with your kids to make sure that they're looking at this positively?
Yeah. So I'll rewind just a little bit about you talking about golf, because I recently took this up a couple years ago, and it can be a very frustrating sport because it depends on the conditions and this, and so many different factors are involved. What I've always told my kids in sports, and I've had the honor to, I would always jump in and coach. I would always volunteer. I would usually do assistant coaching because then I'd have to deal with the parents and I could have fun with the kids. But I did probably 16 to 18 seasons of youth sports that I was coaching, and some at high level. So there was a lot of interactions that we had. One of the things I would always tell young people is that great athletes have short memories. So we're going to make mistakes. Like every sport is a game of mistakes, whether it be golf, whether it be baseball, whether it be soccer, whether it be wrestling, it doesn't matter what it is. Every sport is a game of mistakes. And the less mistakes you can make, the better, and you'll probably win. The team that makes the least amount of errors in baseball usually wins, especially at a lower age. Maybe in the pros, they're not making too many errors, but in Little League and before Little League, there's constant errors. And I would always say, by the way, everybody's going to make an error. So the quicker you can take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, let it go. The quicker you can let that mistake go, you'll be ready for the next play. But when you ponder on that mistake, That's when you're going to tighten up. I was in combat sports for a long time and still am. And I tell my fighters, like, listen, fighting, swinging a punch it's like a hose. Think about a hose. If you crank a hose, it's not going to flow. You have to relax. Every punch has to be relaxed. Everything in your body has to be relaxed. So it's just like when you make a mistake. When you make a mistake, you tighten up. If you relax, take a breath, and you're ready for the next play, chances are you're gonna bring down the mistakes, and you're gonna help your team on to victory. That's one. So, always remember, great athletes, short memories. Then you get into some of the conversations. I don't usually get into it. I try not to get into stuff in that moment, because if there was something hard that happened on the field or whatever, and the kid is steaming or I'm steaming, I'm very competitive, so I could be steaming too. But then later on, I always would talk to my kids, and it's interesting. We're having this conversation because we were out, like I said, we were just on the Christian Micro Tribe, and I was sharing this with those guys, is that I have a conversation a lot of times with my kids about the culture of our home. And so I'll say Luke was playing a sport and there was a conversation or something that happened. I'd say, hey, this happened. I talk about the example. Yeah, I said, how did that make you feel? And does that fit with the culture of our home? How should that conversation, how could that conversation have gone better? So really relaying things back to, in talking to your kids, and even when you get into sexual conversations with specifically your boys, right? Because I have them with my boys, I let my wife work with my daughter. One of the things I got from my pastor many years ago is he'd be like, John, talk to your kids like, how does an Edwin man show up, right? So how does a LeBar man show up? How does he treat other people? How does he treat women? How should you treat your future wife? How do you treat your wife? I talk to my kids about, hey, how do you see your dad treating your mom? How do you expect you should treat your future girlfriend or wife? And that, because we live in a society where it's just everything's right in front of you. It's so fast paced. But when you slow down, you think about the culture of your home and you remind your kids about the culture of your home, then they'll carry that along with them.
Yeah. I'm listening to a book right now called Family Unfriendly, talking about how society itself is set up to be unfriendly towards families. Everything from like how we build communities to some of the laws and things that have been coming into place about you can't even let your 11-year-old kid walk to the park by himself anymore because you're going to be accused of child neglect and all sorts of stuff. And then I look at the society as a whole anyways, like even if you look at outside of those and the things that we push in front of our kids as a society, maybe not you or I, and hopefully not the listeners, but when this is sitting in front of them 9 times out of the 10, or their iPad is sitting in front of them, the things that they're exposed to is super unfriendly to families. Like how men are just completely pushed aside in society now. Like being a straight white male is about the worst thing you could possibly be in the world at the moment. And so I'm screwed. But like how do I represent what it means to strive and be that good man in society, be that like, and I think it was, I want to say it was at church on Sunday, because as we're recording this is 2 days past Father's Day, but on Father's Day, they were talking about, there was a verse they were reading about how, I think it was at church, that the world, when you follow what the Bible says, the world is going to hate you. There's no way around it. The world is going to hate you. So how do I raise my boys to be okay with the world hating them, knowing that the world is not who you're trying to be like? It's well beyond what we're striving for. And I'm going off on 7 different tangents right now because my brain is going, there's so much to what you just said, plus what I'm listening to on this book, plus what I'm hearing at church. And it's, man, oh man, like how important is it to really raise our kids in a way that is countercultural and that is growth minded, that is respecting and honoring women and each other and taking care of each other and being a good leader, especially for teaching my boys to be good leaders of their families as they grow up. And it's like heartbreaking to me to continue to watch what's going on in the world and watch what's going on in families. And I think it's like 41% of kids today are born to single parent families. Holy gracious, that's asinine to me. No wonder things are falling apart the way they are. But I love that you like the culture side of the house. Like we talk about that in business all the time. What's the culture inside of your business? Is it encouraging mistakes, or is it like, are you whipping people for making mistakes? Like what is the culture you're making? So inside your house, if you're not doing the same thing, they're going to get their culture from somewhere. So hopefully the Edwin culture is the overpowering culture instead of the worldly culture.
Yeah. And also, you have young kids. Rasheen and I have always been intentional about asking our kids to bring their friends to our home, just because for a few reasons. One, we also want to influence their friends, but two, we want to know who they're hanging around with, because show me your friends and I'll show you your future. There have been many instances where our kids' friends will come in and they'll run up the steps and they'll be like, Mr. Edwin, I got on a roller, I did whatever. And it's pretty cool to see that happen because you know that you're being a great influence on not just your kids, but on their friends. And so we want to create a culture where it's welcoming to other people to come through our home and to sit down at dinner with us and hear the yays and nays and get good stuff that they may not be getting at home. So we've always been really intentional about that sort of thing. And look, there's been, I can think right now of some friends, of some friends that my youngest son has that they don't like coming to my house because we have rules here. And it's like, all right, too bad, bro. This is the culture of my house. And there was one instance, and I love this kid, but he was my older son's friend, and he did something. I said, bud, the door's right there, and if you're not going to abide by the rules of this home, you're gonna walk back out that door right now.
Yeah.
And I love the kid. He's a great kid. He's 20, and he's like my own child.
I am super thrilled to talk to John Laney, a fellow military veteran.
So part of my fantasy of financial independence was, wouldn't it be awesome to be able to hang out at home, make breakfast for my boys, do a little work at the kitchen table, and just be around? That was a fantasy. And I found I could get, my efficiency went from 90% to about 10% when everybody needed me at all hours of the day, at all times. And instead of being viewed as the dad that was always available, I was the dad that was always on my computer and on my phone because I was around, because I was with my kids, but I was always on my phone. I just took my work back home. And yes, I was available. I had more time for them. But every time they needed me, it was the old, just a second, Otis, as I finished the email and then went and helped it. So instead of being gone like half the day, like most dads are, gone, you're focused at work, and then you come home and you're focused on your kids, I was just like always distracted, computer, always on my phone. And that was not a great first year sabbatical. So those are my two boys, my experience trying to mix dad business and fatherhood business together. And man, I tell you what, worst idea ever to do work at home on the kitchen table when you got two boys around. Or a wife that needs a jar opened or an ear to listen to or whatever. You just suddenly...
It was very sexist of you to say that your wife needed help with a jar opening. She is.
Whatever she needs. Whatever she needs.
Well, as it was funny because just last night I was asked to open two jars. So one by my mom and one by my au pair. I'm like, okay, it's fantastic. I'm glad I'm here for something. I appreciate it. But no, I definitely would love to dig into the distraction of the computer. As I work from home, and I warned you before we went on this call, and anybody who's watched this podcast on YouTube, they will have seen my kids because they jump in here all the time and interrupt everything I do. I completely understand that feeling. And I think my kids think that I work more than my wife does. My wife is still in the Air Force. She's gone before they wake up, and she comes home right about dinner time. So she's gone like 13 hours a day. And I think they think I work more than her, because every time they see me, I'm sitting in front of the computer. But every time they see mom's home and she gets to play, and she's now in the pool, and I'm finally at that point where I'm like, okay, now I get to do something in the house, to fix something in the house, or to do something here while mom gets to play with the kids. And so like the dynamic is so weird to think about how they view what it is. And that's all I try to talk to people about all the time is like the things that you do, like the actions you do, kids are catching on to it, because most things are caught, not taught. So it doesn't matter what you say out of your mouth. It's what they see going on, and they're going to catch all of that. I'm starting to go into a thing that I want to talk to you about later, so I'm going to shut up now and ask you another question to get a little bit.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm 48, and I have found probably over the last 5 years, it has been so hard to refocus after distraction. Like I used to be able to multitask and like refocus, kid would bother me, refocus, no problem. Now, dude, if I get a distraction, it takes me like if I'm in the middle of an email and I get a kid or whatever, it takes me a significant amount of time to re-spin back up. So I don't know if you experience that also.
Mentally, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And and sometimes it's just hearing something outside, right? I may hear the boys get angry at each other for one reason or another. Just an example today, that I thought they were angry at each other because the younger boy was crying and the other one was saying, would you just tell me what happened? So like, I thought they were arguing, but what happened is one son headbutted the couch by accident. Ooh. So he hurt his nose, the bridge of his nose. So he's crying, and I'm thinking, so I'm completely interrupted. I stand up, I open the door, boys, come here. And it was unnecessary, but it completely, now I got to sit down. Where was I at? I was in the middle of this email, but now I've got this other thing, and it's definitely, I'm with you there. Now, you got out 4 years ago. You retired, right? 4 years ago.
Retired, yeah. 20 years.
So 4 years ago, you retired, which means your kids were, 6 and 9, if my math serves me correctly.
So what was life pre having kids, and then after having kids, dealing with military service? Like, how did you feel as you were, things are still going on in wars when you start having kids and stuff's happening? So what were your feelings as you were going through living life single and then married without kids and then married with kids? Talk to me about how that life transition was going on for you while in.
I was blessed, lucky, super fortunate. While I had kids, I deployed twice with kids. And that was when they were pretty young. My last 8 years or 6 years or so, I did not deploy. I traveled, but it was like I was gone 2 weeks, come back 2 weeks. So I didn't have that 6 month, 8 month deployment horror hanging over me as a dad. And I know so many buddies that did just that. Come off an extended deployment, turn around and do it again, and they've got kids, and it just makes you sick to your stomach. So yeah, I did not have to deal with that. And a lot of I nearly had similar to a 9-to-5 regular business job during my peak parenting times. I would do my entrepreneur business stuff either at work, like during off hours at work. I did a ton of it when I traveled. So I would travel instead of going out and drinking with the buddies. Like I'd be like John in his hotel room, like cranking out my little biz, or when the kids went to bed. And so I really never had to be that like dad on the computer at home with the kids needing you until I got out of the Navy. Then came to Mexico and started doing that on my kitchen room table, which was a disaster in progress.
Yeah, completely understand that. Yeah, I was very much not 9 to 5. And I've got one of my going away gifts when I left Japan. It says, Adam, always TDY Labar, thanks for visiting. Because I was never there. So I was like always gone somewhere. I was quote unquote deployed to Thailand for a while. I had to go down to multiple different bases around the world to fix issues here or do something there. And I was like constantly doing something. And it was exhausting for me. And I was sat there and looked at my wife, and she had more along that 9 to 5. We were in the same career field, but had such different existences inside that career field. It was mind-boggling to me. I wanted to be a dad more than anything. And it was like, I can't keep doing this. Like something's got to give, because I would come home and then they'd go to sleep and I would be up typing away, underwriting on deals, trying to find my next opportunity on phone calls. Like in Japan, I'm on the other side of the world. So I'm like in the middle of the night trying to have phone calls with my team to see what was going on with the deal that they had. And man, oh man, it was just such a butt kicking. So let's move into your move to Mexico. I'm intrigued by this move to Mexico. So talk to me just how, like you already alluded to it as far as wanting to go somewhere and serve for a year. And so let's go across the border to Mexico. Super easy to do during COVID as opposed to flying to Europe or flying to Asia. So what have you been doing in that process? What was it like dragging your kids along? So now your kids again are I think we went over 9 and 6 or something like that when you got out. I'm assuming that if you weren't homeschooling then, you are now. But how is all that? Talk to me about that transition.
Yeah, so our impetus was the desire for service. And as a Christian, service is important. Serving the least of these is important. And I at least wanted to, probably saying it wrong, but get some meaningful service on my resume. I wanted to do that. That was important to do. And I knew if we go back to Oregon, I knew this was a great opportunity. This was a great opportunity between getting out of the Navy and going back to Oregon to do this. Okay. So we wanted to do this service. So our kids, they were young, so they just went along, and they woke up one day and they're like, okay, we're going to Mexico. And it was weird. And we found an orphanage, and we found the director of an orphanage. We're actually staying at his house, he's got a guest house that we've been renting out. And it took a while to get plugged in. As with anything, we were homeschooling our kids. We have been homeschooling our kids. We've been homeschooling them 4 days a week, and then we drive across into San Diego the 5th day into school. And man, that's a 4+ hour in the car experience of leaving at 5 a.m. and getting home, or leaving at 6 and getting home at 6 or 7. So it's a long stinking day. But as we stayed more and more in Mexico, the kids got more and more involved in the orphanage. They had a lot of buddies at the orphanage. Met a lot of kids out in the community, and they just loved it more and more. And I tell you what, I have so appreciated Mexican culture. By living in Mexican culture, I feel like I appreciate my culture even more And I appreciate all the differences. Like, here's an example. Okay. A lot of Americans here, man, we're libertarians and we want that lower tax and all that. Okay, that's great. Come to Mexico and you'll have dirt roads. So if we want lower taxes, no problem. Let's just accept that, okay, we're now going to be driving on dirt roads with lower taxes. Easy. Shut down the libraries and, all those things. So I very clearly see the trade-offs, and not to judge higher class neighborhoods or beautiful landscaped cities versus non-landscaped cities. I'm not judging that. I'm just saying, oh, wow. Like in Mexico, they made a decision, an economic decision, that they were going to prioritize different things over what we prioritized in America. And that's great. I tell you what, one thing they have prioritized is community here in Mexico. You go down to the beach on Saturday and you'll see grandma and grandpa and grandkids and cousins and moms and dads and barbecues and coolers and loud music. And it is a family together, not a bunch of people all on their cell phones. It's a family together, just being and they'll do it all day long. Like, what are you guys doing? But those type of things I've so appreciated, learning about just different ways to see the world, different ways to interact with the world, different ways to be a community. By my time down here in Mexico.
I am super excited to talk to another GoBundance brother, Lance Knaub. Now you're successful. You've got a strong, growing business. Your kids are obviously growing up very differently than you did, where maybe now they have the $40 jams and the other kids don't, right? So how do you have conversations now looking back at the way you grew up to ensure, or hopefully ensure, or maybe you're not doing this, that's a leading question, to ensure that they don't get any of the superiority feeling going the other direction where they're making other kids feel like you did?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And definitely this is real, because even in our circle of friends, like in the GoBundance world, Joe Palazuelo mentioned exactly this 2 months ago at our Philly tribe meeting as the main thing on his mind. So yeah, I'm very humbly blessed, and so are you. And so that is a real thing. And it's definitely, I want our kids to appreciate money and learn money. And so I guess some of the things that are happening is my daughter Sage has been working for a couple of years now, and I've seen that make a difference. My son's just started working for about a month, besides pet sitting for the neighbors, but that's small. But now having his first real job, and I'm very impressed. He's been working all day Saturdays, and that's making a difference. So I really do try, Jody and I both try to make sure that they are appreciating everything we have. Take opportunities to do like gratitudes together on our Sunday family meals, and getting the kids exposed to volunteering and other settings with less people with less has been a strategy. And even my daughter, like her dance company, so Sage and Sierra both dance. Sierra is not dancing now, but that dance community. So besides being a biz dad, I'm a dance dad. The socioeconomics of the dance school are outrageous, like really. And like our kids were asking us, why don't we have a beach house and all these things when they're younger? But their current dance school, BZd&x Dance, does a great job of getting them off to volunteer and leading by example, really fundraising and doing some things. So those are just a few of the things, but it's definitely a big challenge for sure. It's easy to not appreciate all the abundance that we have.
Yeah. I think it takes intentionality on your part, on our part, to really know that we're engaging our kids to help them understand where they are, like how, and it's funny, Tim, why am I forgetting his last name? He's a GoBundance guy, but he was like, look, my kids were commenting all the time about how wealthy we were. And I said, daddy's wealthy. You are broke. Like, you are very broke. Daddy is wealthy. And that's not, I love it. It's tongue in cheek and it's a lot of fun. But at the same point, like helping our kids know, no, like we worked hard for what we've got and are still working hard to grow what we have. They see me work my butt off trying to make sure that I'm always, Daddy, do you always have to be in the office? Hey, if you like living, if you like things, I have to do this, right? But exposing them to a whole other world of stuff that they don't get to see. The other day we were driving around, and even telling the story feels weird, but there was a homeless guy or a guy that was next to us and he was walking around with a cane. And I often tell my kids that I 99 times out of 100, I won't give them money, but I will gladly buy them food, buy them whatever. I don't know where the money goes, but I do know where the food goes. So they're like, Dad, like my son asked me, can we go buy him lunch? So we drove around, went and bought him lunch. He understands the difference between the guy on the corner and us, and where we can do and how we can help serve these people that have less. And the guy like completely was so overwhelmed by us dropping this bag of food off for him. And I was honored that my son was like, let's do this. We need to go do this for this guy. But it felt so good for him at 9 years old to be excited to do that. And I was like, man, I want to pass that as much as possible. That the heart that they have is phenomenal. So that level of intentionality, if I will absolutely turn this car around and go buy some food for that person, because that's what you want to do. He's even brought up, he said, I want to have a bag in the middle of the car that just has food that we can always just reach in and give to them. And I was like, all right, let's figure out how we can do it. Like, that's awesome.
Man, that's amazing. Kudos to you. And just to share a story, it was 2 years ago, we were in Italy, and I think our last night, our youngest daughter, Sierra, exactly that after dinner, she saved part of her meal and she said, Daddy, can we go give this to someone who needs it? And we walked around Rome and found someone in need, and the look on their face, it was really special to see her hand food to someone who needed it. And they were just so appreciative.
I am stoked to talk to Thomas Pfanner. So obviously you are involved in your kid's life now, and things have changed a lot. So walk me through those beginning stages from where you weren't being able to see him at all. And then we'll pause at that 8th grade mark when he went back to live with his mom for a little while.
We actually got engaged with my wife right after I finished school. And we got married and moved back to Eugene to be with Charles when he started kindergarten. And so that's when we started having him 3 days a week. And then it got it up to 50-50. And so the standard was 50-50 for all the way through from until he was in 7th grade. And when he was in 7th grade, his mom moved without any notice to Central Oregon. And I'm sharing this story. I do not want you as a listener to feel like, oh, this person's taking a victim. This is simply the challenges that I went through and overcame. Don't see this as like a victim card. Really the opposite. This is the goal for this is to share an authentic story. When he was 7th grade, his mom moved away without any notice. Just got a text message. We're moving to Sisters, which is 2 hours away from Eugene. 2.5. This is when we're in COVID. So if you remember when kids were starting to come back to school after COVID, and this time I'm working as a PE teacher. I've been at this point. Kids are coming back to school after COVID. They're having half days where you have half the school coming in the morning and half the school in the afternoon. So the class sizes were small. So you had a little bit of time that he was getting in school each week. And I'm going to stay and finish the school year here. And basically it was decided like, Mom, I don't want to move to Central Oregon. I want to stay with Dad. So for 9 months from, I think it was May, like maybe April of 2021 until January, he was living with me and my wife full time in Eugene and his younger sister, Maddie. And there was a lot of really good things going for him. He got a job during the summer. I coached his flag football team. He was passing all his classes. But during that time, going into that winter, I started coaching wrestling. And he felt like I was more commanding him to perform in school. I was doing things and measuring, basically putting him in a box that was limiting his expression of his own heart and expression of his own goals. So he was doing things because I was holding a stopwatch, measuring everything, ruling over his day to day. And so that is one of the factors that contributed, one of the big factors, the ownership that I take, that contributed to that day in January of 2022 when I couldn't get a hold of him after school, didn't know where he was. Things were a little icy, but I didn't think they were that bad. I finally get a call from him about 8 o'clock, which feels like an eternity.
Yeah, of course.
When you're not able to get a hold of your child. I'm done with you. I'm moving in with Mom across state. And at this point, I had gone through filing court paperwork to have him stay with us, and we were going to have a court battle coming up. So I don't know if people have gone through a court battle for custody. It's a very period because everything is amplified in what's going on. The performance of the child, the situations of both parents, everything is getting examined, and is it in a positive way? And their dads, the court system screws over dads. And I'm going to have the mindset that I'm going to go into the game and I'm going to be my best self. And I'm not going to have this layover and just submit to the narrative that mom always wins custody. Even though there was a lot stacked against me when we had that custody battle over the summer of 2022, it was decided that with the contingency of me leaving Eugene, leaving my town, we owned our home there. So our home, we did a lot to establish our base there with our parent. My parents lived in town. But if I moved to Central Oregon, I would get all the contingencies that I was looking for with joint custody, 50-50 parenting time, no child support. So then it was decided I'm going to be able to come back. So getting that court battle and that win, one, it's expensive, but two, I knew that was just the first door. The second door was what kind of connection and relationship am I going to have with Charles now to make an impact? And then when we move out there, is he just going to be like, forget this? I had to have faith in God and my ability and trust that pouring into him and helping him evolve who he is was going to put us in the position to be able to make a positive.
Those first years when it turned into 50-50 and you were back and forth, what sort of thought process, if any, did you have about, for lack of better terms, the philosophy of being dad? What was how would you say, especially looking back on it now, you would describe your parenting style then when he was in elementary and getting ready to go into junior?
Yeah, I got him involved with scouts. I coached his flag football team from 4th grade all the way through 8th grade every year. And then he played basketball a few years. He played soccer. So getting him involved, getting him signed up for things was big. And my style was really just to be involved and get him encouraged. And it was a lot more of, hey, this is the way things are than it is now. And part of that is the evolution of him moving into a teenage year. But there was not the level of depth. Now that I've gone through this transformation, the intention and leadership style behind it, it was just let me just get in, get my hands dirty.
Yeah, it's let him do what you were doing, right? Playing the sports, being involved, because that seemed to make you successful in what you were doing, and also what you love to do anyways, is being involved in sports and whatnot. And now the transition, right? So how long was Charles away before? What was that length of time from the January of 2022 until you really you got through that first door and figuring out how to go through the second?
Sure. It was all it was the summer. So after he walked away, which was in January, in the spring, I started to rebuild things a little bit, and then it would collapse again. It collapsed again in May, and I had to rebuild it up again. So I'm like, man, I don't know if this is just going to collapse again. I remember in June, he wouldn't even talk to me. I was going into the court battle and going into depositions, and my son wasn't even talking to me. And I had to fight and say, this is why he needs to be with me. But it started off with sending him Instagram reels of football or something, some common thread that we could connect on. And from there, it was hey, what if I come out to Eugene, because he still had friends there, for a weekend, and you could help with some housework and maybe earn some money. So then he came out for a couple weekends, and that started to build, and you started to have small conversations that could lead to a little bit more time. So it was from January, and then the spring rebuilt, and then it felt like everything collapsed again in May. I remember there was a time when he came out to visit, and I was like, hey, this first night, because it was we got back, because I picked him up in Central Oregon. Tonight, it's going to be family night. You're going to be here, spend the night here, and then tomorrow night you can stay the night with a friend, do whatever. And he ended up asking to go to the mall to hang out for a couple hours. That's fine. You can go to the mall to hang out. and then split. Couldn't get a hold of him. He just went over to his friend's house, didn't answer my call. Forget you, Dad. You don't have custody of me. All of those things were going on. And so I was like, what do I need to do? I felt like I had come a long way and built it back up and then collapsed again. So January and then October is when we moved in. So it was like, I guess 9-10 months.
Man, I would imagine that was a extremely stressful, exhausting 10 months of a roller coaster, emotions, of energy, of everything. Now, in this time, that was in 2022. So it sounds like you had at least one, maybe two kids at that point. It sounds like your second one was born in either 2021 or 2022, yes. And your oldest one was born around 2020.
Yes. So Maddie was born in 19 and Lila was born in 2022. She just turned. So while Charles was out with his mom. And the other part that was concerning was this: during that time, he wasn't really attending school very often and wasn't performing. So it was clear. I knew if I didn't get it back, regain the connection, he was going to be a high school dropout very quickly. I was going to mention too, if you're going through that situation or you foresee it, it's always staying ahead. So I knew from my experience with it that the 6 months prior is what's going to get measured. 6 to 12 months prior, that's what's going to get measured if you go to court. So it sounds dark to say it this way, but if every day of the year or every day of your kid's life, you look back at the last 6 to 12 months and you say, wow, look at what an impact that I made on my kid's life. That's the best defense that you could ever have against any type of divorce or custody battle, because that's making it you very difficult to go to court against.
Mm-hmm. Man.
More impact that you can have on your kid's life day to day. Dig the well before you're thirsty.
Tell me where you're at now. How did you get to working in that August of 2020, October of 2022, finally getting to some sort of closure with that, to now, right before, again, we got on this call, you're getting a call from Charles, hey, can you bring something to the school for me? How do we get to that point?
Yeah. So we got here, he was addicted to marijuana, and he was in a school that he only had to attend a couple hours a day. It was called the Redmond Proficiency Academy, which is cool for a lot of kids. It was more like a community college setup. But for Charles, you talked about responsibility and then having that free time that can move into more harmful activities, right? And that's what was happening for him. Too much freedom. And I was like, my first big challenge coming back as a dad after restoring some relationship and trust was, okay, I've got a teenage son. He's stoned all the time. What am I going to do? How do I need to put him in a position to be successful and have an awakening? So he said, hey, we got to have, the first thing I did was I had a conversation with him. Like, why are you wanting to smoke weed? What is it doing for you? And so he told me some stuff, and probably a lot of it was like him trying to cover his, I think it helps me focus better or perform better. I'm like, oh, okay. So I said, what's really important is you're taking care of your body. And so we're going to get you involved in some type of other sports, martial arts, something. And so there was a Muay Thai. I trained jiu-jitsu. At the jiu-jitsu gym that I trained at, there's Muay Thai. So we got him signed up for Muay Thai, and he ended up hating it first. And then he started to see what he was capable of. He started to really like it. I remember the first day we went, and then afterwards he's, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. He could barely even, he's like, I could only go one day this week. And he started to build up, and he started to realize, oh, when I go to Muay Thai and I'm stoned, that's a lot more miserable experience. And then I'm eating McDonald's. So he's okay, maybe this isn't as good. So he started to make better decisions about, okay, I want to work at this. I want to build my fitness, and seeing that the weed was really detaching him from the real world, and it was an escape as opposed to him really leaning into his power as he developed himself as a man. That's where it took us. And that journey of him doing martial arts I remember there was a huge moment. So it was probably November, December when we started training Muay Thai. Fast forward to the summertime, he's going to be transferring schools, which was great because he had a school that's like a normal school day. We go get a hold of the wrestling coach. He's like, yeah, we've got a wrestling practice this time. We go in, and he had already done a Muay Thai class in the morning. And they say, hey, yeah, we're getting ready for our summer camp. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, summer camp. Cool. I told him, you probably wouldn't be able to do the summer camp on this late of notice, though. It was like a 3-day overnight camp. And the coach is like, yeah, he could. Like, Charles, you probably wouldn't want to just go to a wrestling camp, but you just started like your first day today. He's, oh, yeah, I would. I want to go. So he went from within 6 months of just being a stoner to now, like, day of, there's a wrestling camp that's tomorrow. That's 3-day camp. Sign me up. I'm in. So, yeah, I give him a lot of credit for focusing on himself and understanding, learning about his body and what he wants. But martial arts has really brought us closer together because it's something we can train and do together. And it takes a lot of the pressure off. Because that's just sitting across from a table. There's times where we just sit across and eat dinner or whatever, but if that's all it is, it's awkward. Even for me, all the work that I do with connecting with Charles and learning to get him, know him better, just sitting, like, talking with him. So having something that we enjoy that we do together, it brings up conversations. And it brings up like, oh, this fighter, and he talks about the UFC, and we go back and forth about stuff that's seemingly unimportant. And what I've found is a lot of times those conversations that feel like they're the least important are the ones that are the most important to our kids.
Yeah. I think it's Stephen Covey. I can't remember the book, but he talks about sometimes you need a 2-hour-long conversation to really get to what's going on, because the first hour is just filled with whatever stuff is there, and then you finally start getting into it. So you may just be talking about something UFC, but before you know it, you're talking about something way deeper than that, because you've let some guard down. You've been able to now break through some barriers, and you're like connected on a much more personal, emotional level now, because you've broke through all of those. So especially as dudes, like there's almost always walls up there on a different level, because we like to block our emotions out. So it's like a way to connect. And I think, me personally, I look at martial arts, sports as a whole, but martial arts especially, that I want to applaud you because martial arts, putting him into martial arts obviously helped. And that's good on you for pushing towards that. But it allows a level of discipline that's not coming from mom and dad. It's coming from a third party that is instilling it. And it's, like they hear it so much better when it comes from somebody that's not mom and dad, because when it's dad, you're just being authoritarian and telling me what I need to do. But when it's this thing, it's like, oh, I totally get it now. I understand where it's coming from. What would you say? Were you guys able to have some of those types of conversations about the discipline side of martial arts? You said he saw it like in himself, but how were you able to break through in some of those conversations so that you could help influence there as well?
It's really about asking questions, asking the right questions with the right tonality. So I remember he was having some trouble in school, his freshman year of high school, my first year here, and talking back to his teachers and not doing his school, just doing the minimum. So there was a lot of, okay, what is it that you want to do? Where is it that you want to be going? Getting really clear on that. And that is what I hit over and over. What is it you want to do? Where is it that you want to be going? What are the actions you need to take to get there? What do you need to avoid? What things are going to try to hold you back? So often young men don't have a direction.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just floating. So having an intentional direction is like the most important thing for me. And everybody in our house knows that's an expectation from me, my wife, Charles, my younger daughters. Where are you going? What is the direction that you're taking? So I don't complicate it. It's just, where is it you're going? Do you have an intention? We had my dad's 80th birthday party. My uncle came out, and he's in Alaska. His kids have been through college, and so he said, "Oh, Charles, do you want to go to the U of O, University of Oregon, after you're done?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm going to go to Thailand and train Muay Thai for a year after high school. And my uncle, gosh, I wasn't expecting that answer. Hey, as a dad, I don't care if he goes to college or moves to Las Vegas to train for MMA fight. If he has an intentional direction and he's moving towards it, day by day, week by week, month by month, that's what I care.
I love that. How are you putting that in practice for your younger two? You said that's one of the standards, right? But at a young age, obviously they don't know where they're going. So how are you implementing that for younger kids?
For me, I'm more like, for Charles, he's got a runway that's, I'm just going to use my screen here. It's like this wide that he's going in. For my daughters, so with Maddie, it's about skill development so that she has more capabilities. That's something that I see, is that kids become 18, 19 years old, graduating from high school, and they have the same skill set as the other 20 million 18 to 19-year-olds that are graduating from high school. So we have her doing rock climbing. She's 4 years old and she knows how to ride a bike. She has a physical skill set that's going to help give her confidence as she takes things on. I will give her credit. We did preschool through homeschooling this past year. I really want to be in school. I really want to be around other kids where I can make friends. And so we got her into a pre-K program for next year. So that's her, like, okay, this is something that Maddie really wants. She really wants this socialization opportunity. She has her sister and she loves spending time with us. That's something she really wants. And she thrives in it. I don't know where she got it from, because it wasn't from me and it wasn't from her mom. She'll be at the park and she'll just go up to a kid and say, like, hey, do you want to play with me? Do you want to be my friend? Do you want to play? And 75% of the time, they're like, yeah, sure. And then 25% of the time, they're like, no, I'm doing something else, or not really. And she's okay, we'll go to the next kid. And she makes friends with them there. She's great. She's like very much the most social of everybody in our house. So her like finding that space and giving her opportunities to develop skills, both socially and physically. That's what I'm focused on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A child setting itself apart is very difficult to do without intentionality. So if you're intentional about being a parent, then I think that the world is your oyster. Go and do whatever to be intentional and make it happen. So I love that she's that outgoing and ready to go, and that you're encouraging that. What would have been a way of keeping Charles in a box when it comes to riding the bike to school, right? How would you have led that incorrectly to have then kept him in a box?
If I would have been like, hey, you have to learn how to ride your bike. If I would have not given him any help or instructions, like, you have to learn how to do this, then I would be for, like, you have to ride your bike to school. Not you get to ride your bike to school. That's one frame. If I would have kept him dependent on me, driving him to school every day, dropping him off, now I'm keeping him in a box because he's dependent on me. He's not dependent on himself. If you're helping your kids develop skills, there's no way to, like, you're going to be doing great. But when I messed up was when he was 8th grade. What are your grades? Let's make sure we got this court case coming up. Let's make sure that your grades are looking good. Let's make sure you're getting to bed on time. Let me give you this Fitbit and we can track your sleep and make sure your sleep is good, because I'm worried about your sleep. And then your phone, we're going to make sure you're regulated how many hours you're on your phone. And it ended up creating a lot more tension between us because I was overseeing so much of what he was doing. And he really saw me, the brand that I created, was a source of restriction.
Okay.
So I had done great things in my past, and now I see, okay, that's why this worked, because I was working on his growth.
What sort of things now are you trying to implement or continuing to implement with your son now that he's 16 years old? And there's obviously a bit more independence for a 16-year-old than there is as a 12-year-old. So what are you instilling in his life now as a dad to keep that process flowing?
Great question. Because it's something like, it's a continued journey. I still struggle with it, right? So he actually will sometimes lean into wanting more help than he needs. and I have to remind him that he's capable of doing it on his own. For example, he was riding his bike home the other day and he saw me pass in the truck and he called me. He's, hey, could you come back and pick me up? I was like, no, you don't need to depend on me. You can get home on your own. Grumpy about it. He has to ride his bike. But the big thing, like, he's learning to drive now, right? He has his driver's permit. So that's another opportunity. I'm going to help him develop that skill. So if you have a teenager, that's a really powerful time when they're getting their driver's permit because they're associating it with this new skill. And that one-on-one time, those 100 hours that they have to get with you, that's really valuable time that you're not going to have another chance like that. So that's one that's really, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's something that's built in to a rite of passage, is getting that driver's license and helping your kids develop that skill of driving.
And that can be an exhausting part of a dad's life, I would imagine. I remember my dad once in a while teaching me how to drive stick, and I think I stressed him out. He does not like being in the passenger seat at all. So I think that going into that now, looking back at it and hearing what you're saying, like going into it with that mindset of I'm giving my kid a bit of a growth opportunity and I'm providing something to them really changes it rather than just, oh, I'm doing this because I have to.
Yeah, it's fun. I like helping. He just recently got his permit. I like helping him. And selfishly, Charles is typically has a pretty big, oh yeah, I can do that. And so then we get in the car and he's driving the stick. He's, oh, that's harder than I expected. And he messes up, he's always calling other people out when things don't go well. So then, when he messes up and I'm just like, it's cool. It's part of the process. He has this moment that's okay. So it's okay to mess up. It's okay to mess up. Now, once you're on the road and you're driving and you hit another car, that's a bigger problem. But as you're learning the skill in a parking lot, yeah, this is the safe place to mess up.
Yep, for sure.
And then getting into tournaments, try to give Charles credit for this too. He wants to do wrestling tournaments, even off the season, giving him a chance to do that. Anything where I can support his growth with his body, with his skills, I'm looking for those. I'm consciously have an eye out for them. I think that's one of the big things is if we don't know to look for it, we won't find it. I have a good friend, Miguel Mendoza, and he's really powerful podcast as well. I encourage you to try to reach out to him to get him on this. He had a quote that I love, and it's so simple. It says, falling down in the water is not what causes us to drown. Staying in it. If you're a dad and you're listening to this and you're in a space that, man, I feel like I'm drowning. I feel like everything's coming down around me with my kids. The challenge that you're going through doesn't define who you are as a dad. I still go through challenges every day with my kids. I have faith in God. I have faith in myself and my abilities. That I have what it takes to help lead my family out of this. And I'm going to take a step forward. And even if it's not the right step, I'm still going to be stepping up. So having that mentality that when things go wrong, you're going to get back up. It sounds like a cheesy line from a movie, but it's so true.
Yeah. Just apply. Like cliches are cliches for a reason because they make sense and they fit. Yeah. So I am super excited to chat with Darren Light.
A lot of successful entrepreneurs, business people, they read books on how to make the next million, their mind towards making that next million, whatever that is. But they're not reading books on how to be a better husband, how to be a Christian father, how to be a Christian man to maybe be a mentor for another young man who's going through something, whatever those situations are. And that's, I think we've allowed, okay, here we go. You and I meet for the very first time. Generally, almost the first question out of one of our mouths is, Adam, what do you do?
Yeah.
Your answer now may have been something back in the day different, but now it is, hey, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I get to homeschool my children. I host a podcast for blah, 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 blah. I know you well enough to know that the first thing that comes out of your mouth is not, own 600 multifamily unit doors and blah, blah, and what's your APDI, whatever the
API. Yep.
Yeah. That's because as men, unfortunately, our value from society is wrapped up in who we are from a business standpoint or our status.
Mm-hmm.
Lost my train of thought of why we started talking about that.
Our mindset was as a family man, as a person.
Why are we not reading books? Or number one, why are we not reading the Bible on a daily basis and applying that to our life and our family and our children versus whatever, name the mindset book, if you will.
Yeah. Secret to the Millionaire Mind, right? Which is something I recommend to everybody. I love that book. Yeah. But you still have to have your thought process right. Because again, it doesn't matter if you have that millionaire mind and you get millions of dollars if you lose your family at the cost.
Right. And that's Iki's point about what he said is, what does it matter if it costs you your family, your life, your kids, everything? We know what's lacking in society from a father standpoint. We know that when a man is not in the home, and even if he is in the home, but he's not taking up his responsibilities of leading. And with us, that's a spiritual perspective first and foremost. And then as the father, people will suffer. That has to be done with intentionality. You've already used that word. That's one of mine and Penny's favorite words. So intentionality has to occur with our relationship with God, has to occur with our relationship with our spouse. And then in that order, it has to occur with our children and then our business. And that's hard for us to continue to be intentional just from a human perspective. When we're trying to lead ourselves without God in the picture, that's what's going to happen. If he's first, everything else should fall in line. Yeah. Even though divorced parents, I've been very fortunate and blessed with the men that have been in my life, whether it's my father, my stepfather, or other men that were in my church that witnessed to me or took me on a fishing trip or talked to me about whatever, was also an example of a father in their own family. It's been huge. So I would just say for yourself and whoever's listening, don't take this responsibility lightly. It's a privilege. God, it's such a privilege. And there was a point in time where I took it for granted. And I am blessed to be able to start pouring into my grandchildren. And there'll come a day where I'll have conversations with them about, hey man, I made this mistake growing up. Don't do what your pappy did. That's what they call me.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that. I try to constantly, I hope and pray that everybody listening to this hears it and says, there's a problem with dads, into a point that they know that they're involved dads, right? But I want everybody listening to this to know that we have a bad problem with absentee fathers in this society, which is leading to a lot of the problems that we're seeing. Yeah. So I really want to encourage fathers to be there constantly, to grow with their kids, to help their kids grow and be stronger, wiser. My goal for my boys is for them to be better men than me as they grow up. So if I could teach them to be better men than me by representing at least what it means to be a good biblical Christian man, then hopefully that continues. And as they're climbing up all over my stuff behind me, lost a quarter. They're doing math together, having to flip the coin, which has been a really good time. Nope. You want us to keep together? All right, we'll keep together. You guys, how about I get the coin in a minute? I'm almost.
And I would offer this, Adam, and I know you've probably said this on your show every time you do it, but if a father listens to this and is struggling, reach out, man.
For sure.
Reach out to Adam, to me, anybody else you've heard on this podcast. We're created to pour into other people. Sometimes the problem with men is we think, oh, what's in it for me? That's not how God works. And sometimes from a business perspective, people say, how am I going to get paid if I invest in this guy time and whatever it is? That's a total bad way to look at a situation as well. You never know what you're going to get back or if you even get it back, and you may not get it back this side of heaven. So that's the other thing that you need to remember. And some men don't even know that.
Yeah. And that's one beautiful thing I love about that book, The Go-Giver, being that person who's willing to give. And eventually it'll come back in one way, shape, or form, even if it's only emotional. Like, even if you only get something inside about it, it's going to come back to you. Just 100%. Do what you can.